All right, here we go. Drive time, Wednesday afternoon, 11 minutes past the hour of 2 o'clock. Nice day outside, a little cloudy, but it's warm. It's about 66 degrees with some cloud coverage here in downtown Salt Lake City, Utah, right outside of our Broadway media studios, preparing for a little bit of a chilly Thursday and Friday and Saturday with the potential of rain, but 10-day looks pretty nice. We've had some beautiful weather to start out this November. Here in Salt Lake, and as it is every single day, it's good to have you along for the ride. Spence Checketts behind the mic, Porter Larson behind the glass. A good day, a good Wednesday. If you're a Utah fan, if you're a Utah football fan, it's a good Wednesday. If you're a BYU football fan, it's a good Wednesday. If you're a fan of the Big 12, today is a good day. Right after we said goodnight last night, the first iteration of the college football playoff rankings were released. I was glued to my television, and as they announced Georgia Tech at 17, I said, oh, okay. Then it was Vanderbilt at 16. I went, oh, all right. Louisville comes in at 15. Virginia, highest-ranked ACC team, by the way, rolls in at 14, and then your Utah Utes announced at 13, a full 4 spots higher than what the AP says, what the coaches poll says. And look, I'm not going to say that I called it. I get plenty of things wrong. But for everybody that seemed to be a little bit annoyed that I continue to bring up the S&P Plus and the Football Power Index and some of the other metrics that this new committee said that they would use, and all of these metrics indicating they very much like the Utah Utes, there was a real chance we were going to see what we saw last night. And I've got to say, from a macro standpoint, I think the committee did a really good job. Now, there's a lot left to do here, not just for Utah, but for other schools. A lot of people upset that Texas is up to 11. One of the things I like about the Texas dynamic, we'll get into this on the show. I'm a believer in scheduling uniformity in college football, as you've heard me talk about, and I respect teams that schedule difficult teams in non-conference play. I hate the cakewalk non-conference scenario. I don't like it. We don't learn much about the sport. We don't learn much about the teams. And look, it's not Utah's fault that UCLA was a mess to start the year. It's not BYU's fault that Stanford is not what they were once upon a time under David Shaw. But that was what manifested. Both Utah and BYU did not play tough non-conference schedules. And Texas scheduled Ohio State right out of the gates. And they lost the game, certainly. But that wasn't necessarily something that penalized them all that much. And Texas now has a chance to really play their way in. Their schedule the rest of the way has some very difficult games. Interesting to see Oregon fall a little bit. I don't know really how many, rankings people are going to have a big-time issue with. But the committee also said that they like what the Big 12 has done this year, namely at the top. BYU, undefeated, comes in at number 7. Texas Tech, 8-1. Their one loss to ASU. They come in at number 8. And then we find the Utah Utes at 13. Difficult thing with the Utes is their 2 best wins do not feature teams that are in the top 25 now when it comes to Cincinnati and Arizona State. Now, for the Utes, it's pretty simple. They will be favored in the final 3 games. It's at Baylor after the bye week this week. Then it's home against K-State for the home finale. And then they're at Kansas right after Thanksgiving. Leave no doubt. Do what you did to Colorado. Do what you did to Cincinnati. Do what you did to Arizona State and West Virginia. Go smoke these teams. And then hope you get a little luck on your side. But as a result of last night, we don't need as much luck as we thought we were going to need. So we're going to do a lot of college football on the show today. We're going to react to the rankings. We're going to look ahead to the slate, both in the Big 12 and from a national standpoint. BYU, Texas Tech. 10 a.m., really the first main game on the slate, bright and early. BYU hitting the road. Looks like L.J. Martin is going to play for the Cougars, so good news for BYU there. And Lubbock, Texas, the host of Game Day after Game Day was here in Salt Lake City last week. So we'll do some college football. We'll get into a little NFL. As a Jets fan, I don't really want to because not only do we suck, we're trading away our best young players. Quentin Williams is a Cowboy. Sauce Gardner is a Colt. And, yes, draft picks, sweet. I don't cheer for draft picks because the Jets don't necessarily have a history of making good picks and developing talent. But We will talk a little NFL as the trade deadline came and went. 22 players on the move. Busy NFL trade deadline. Your Week 10 of your pro football slate begins on Prime on Thursday night with the Raiders and the Broncos, a rivalry in the NFL, but two teams heading in the wrong direction. Denver on fire. The Raiders are a joke. So that's your Thursday night slate. So we'll do some NFL on the show. Some rough news. All right. Some rough news for Walker Kessler, okay? You feel horrible for Walker Kessler. Let me just start with that. He's going to have season-ending shoulder surgery. It was announced not too long ago. It's a torn labrum in his left shoulder. So he'll go see Dr. Neil Atrash in Los Angeles, who operated on Cameron Rising's knee, by the way. So Walker, unfortunately, will be lost for the year. And I hate to say this, this is actually best-case scenario for the Utah Jazz as an organization. That sounds very harsh. There's a business reality to this that we'll get into on the show today. So feel horrible for Walker. He's a really good kid. He's a really good young player. The Jazz elected not to sign him to an extension, and serendipity, I don't know. From a business standpoint, as cutthroat as it sounds, this actually isn't bad news for the Jazz. So we'll do some NBA, of course, on the show as well. We're inching closer and closer to starting our NBA Daily Assist lineup now that it is November. We'll start bringing that to you a little bit more consistently. So some rough news for Walker, but not necessarily bad news for the Jazz. RSL announced contract extensions for Pablo Mastroeni and Kurt Schmidt. DeAndre Yedlin got a new deal as well. He's going to be around for a couple of seasons. So a little RSL. The Utah Mammoth are back at it tonight against Toronto. So we've got some hockey on the program, some soccer on the program, pretty much everything on the table this time of year, even though Major League Baseball is done after the Dodgers once again won the World Series. Our first guest today will be Lindsay Rose from Sumer Sports. We'll talk some NFL with Lindsay today on the program. Good day to have CK in. Chris Cabrani covers college football for The Athletic. He joins us live in studio for the 3 o'clock hour, and we'll mainly do Utah football and CFP rankings and Big 12s and BYU with Chris on the program today. Our friend Tony Parks will stop by live in studio as well. So we've got a busy Wednesday show. You are halfway through that work week, one day closer to the weekend. It's a Wednesday edition of The Drive with Lindsay Rhodes, Chris Camerani, Tony Parks, me, Spence Checketts, and that guy, Porter Larson, the host of Ute Pregame on this radio station. Again, I'm not going to say I called it, but you and I, we've been discussing these metrics, these rankings. The committee has told us, all right, it's a new approach. It's a new, basically a brand new committee as far as the members go. And if you took them at their word, there was a chance Utah was going to be maybe 12, 13, 14. But having said all that, I was very pleasantly surprised to see that that's actually how it went down.
Yeah, I thought 15, 14 potentially, but to see them at 13, Spence, that not only tells you that they like the Utes with the metrics, that puts them in position for if things go a certain way, even over your bye week this week and the next couple of weeks after, to be like an at-large team regardless of what happens in the Big 12. I know a 2-loss Big 12 team is really appetizing, it looks like, to the CFP committee, and depending on how it all plays, you might not have to win a Big 12 championship to get in this conference. So obviously exciting. If you look at the first CFP ranking, I think they gave proper credit to the Big 12 without overdoing it, without overstepping there. And I think you should be feeling pretty good if you're really any of the Big 12 teams that are in CFP consideration. Pablo Mastroeni, let's go. Re-upped. And then, as you mentioned, the Kessler stuff. The only thing I'll say, shoulder, my thoughts are with Dr. Uno. And if they can get it right, I'm just saying, because I did the shoulder thing a couple years ago, and I'm still not right. And he's a shot blocker who kind of relies on a lot of that. So hopefully he can get right. Dr. Uno. Is that Uno Doctor?
Is that his nickname? I'm not familiar with his nickname.
Remember Kyle?
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that.
I didn't mean to.
No, I completely forgot.
I think a lot of fans have pushed that out of their memory.
Yeah, bad memory. Dr. Neil Trash is the guy who operated on Cameron. And yeah, you're not wrong. I mean, number one, Walker's got to get right. But from a business standpoint, as harsh as this sounds, it's not horrible news for the Jazz.
Absolutely.
Lindsay Rhodes will be our first guest on this Wednesday afternoon. Happy Wednesday to you. But before Lindsay stops by, courtesy of our good friends and your good friends too at Prize Picks, it's time now for your opening tip.
Welcome to The Drive with Spence Checketts on Utah's #1 sports talk. Now into the studios of ESPN 700 to set the scene for the show. The opening tip of The Drive is brought to you by Prize Picks. Use the code ESPN 700 and run your game with Prize Picks.
You already know that Prize Picks is the best place to win cash on football, whether it is the Niners, the Broncos, the Raiders, or if you're a fan of the New York Jets, you know. However, basketball is here, and Prize Picks is the best way to win cash on hoops, whether it's the Jazz or the Knicks or the Lakers or the Warriors, whichever your favorite team is. It's a good place to win some cash. You can turn your knowledge into cash. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 players' stat projections, and you can win up to 2,000 times your cash. Prize Picks currently offers stacks, meaning you can pick the same player up to 3 times in the same lineup. If you want to pick more on Lauri Markkanen's points, rebounds, three-pointers, you can do that. In the same lineup, only on Prize Picks. You can also follow other Prize Picks players directly on the app and copy their lineups in one click. Whether it is a friend, a celebrity partner, or just someone whose picks you like, hit the follow button and check out every lineup they create in the new feed tab on Prize Picks. Download that Prize Picks app today and utilize the promo code ESPN700, and you're going to get $50 in lineups after you play that first $5 lineup. That's promo code ESPN700 to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup, because on Prize Picks, it is good to be right. All right, we were all waiting on with bated breath last night to see the first iteration and the first release of the college football playoff rankings, which moving forward are really the only rankings that matter. I don't know that I'll even be looking at the coaches poll. I never do that anyway. The AP poll, not germane to what we're going to see the rest of the way. This is the only poll that matters. Okay, at the top, no surprise, it was Ohio State and Indiana out of the Big Ten. Then it's Texas A&M, Alabama, Georgia, and Ole Miss out of the SEC. And then a couple of Big 12 teams. BYU, undefeated, the highest-ranked Big 12 team, comes in at number 7. Texas Tech comes in at number 8. Both those two teams ahead of Oregon at 9. And then Notre Dame at 10. Okay? So throughout the course of really after the BYU game, started to dig into the metrics that this committee told us they were going to use to rank the teams as far as this top 25. And obviously top 12 get in, top 4 seeds get byes, 5 through 12 play in round 1, seeds 5 through 8 get home games, and then the bracket manifests itself the way that it does. But based off of the Football Power Index and S&P Plus, even the week after the BYU game, Utah was ranked higher than BYU, and it really wasn't even that close. And in a couple of metrics, higher than Texas Tech, which caught my eye. I mean, I wasn't even saying that I agreed with it. I was just surprised about it. So your current College Football Power Index has Utah as the highest-ranked team in the Big 12 at 7. They've got Texas Tech at 11, and they have BYU at 14. Okay, that's your Football Power Index. When you look over to Bill Conley's predictive forward-facing measure, he has Utah at 6 in the S&P Plus. He has Texas Tech actually at 4. So he has Tech as the highest-ranked Big 12 team, then Utah at 6, and then you scroll down and find BYU at 16. Okay, so even though BYU got the head-to-head over the Utes, which obviously is very important, I just continue to need to underscore this, because I think lost in the minutia of the approach of this college football playoff committee is simply what happens between the lines, which really is the only thing that matters. And BYU has answered every question that has been asked of them. But when it comes to the predictive stuff of the S&P and the overall analyzation process of the Football Power Index, what they're looking at is, as far as why BYU is not ranked ahead of either Utah or Texas Tech, is a close win against a bad Colorado team, a close win against a very average Arizona team, and struggling on the road against Iowa State. Even though Ames is a tough place to play, Iowa State is 2-4 in conference and barely above 500 overall. Those are the 3 games they're looking at as far as blemishes on what is quite literally a perfect record at 8-0. But it's more than meets the eye. And the committee this year have presented points of emphasis where they're just trying to identify the best teams right now. And does record matter? Of course it does. Does head-to-head matter? Of course it does. Head-to-head is the first tiebreaker to make the Big 12 championship game. But with Utah coming in at 13, it does present some scenarios that honestly, up until yesterday, I did not think were possible. So point of emphasis, number one, final 3 games. Of course, Utah on a bye this week. Get everybody healthy. As far as our understanding, people are, the players are pretty healthy right now anyway. But freshen up for the stretch run and then go leave no doubt. Okay, leave no doubt when it comes to these final 3 games. A 17-16 win in Waco is not going to do it for you. A 20-13 win over K-State is not going to do much for you. I mean, that's just the cruel reality. Style points are going to matter. And you're going to have to send a message to the rest of the country that when it comes to teams where we have more talent than you do, we take care of our business. And we do it, and we leave no doubt. Okay, that is step number 1 as far as what Utah has to do. Now, Utah has been favored in every game this season. And as I talked about to start the year, that was kind of my anticipation, kind of looking at how it could play out. I thought maybe BYU would be favored because it was in Provo. But remember, Utah was favored by a couple of points there to beat BYU. I don't remember what the line settled out with Texas Tech, but I know Utah was at least a field goal favorite, if not more. I feel like it settled at about 4 or 5. I can't remember right now. But even the 2 losses you had, you were favored to win the game. So if you had just taken care of your business all year long, you wouldn't be relying on other outcomes. But there are plenty of scenarios that are very realistic that could unfold that would allow Utah access into the CFP. And yes, you would have liked to beat BYU head-to-head because that's your rival. And yes, you would have liked to get that Tech game because there were so many eyes on you that day. But there's no use in living in that space anymore. And now you do have to rely on some help. You have to rely on maybe BYU going to smoke Tech in Lubbock. I don't believe that's going to happen. And then maybe smoking Tech again in the Big 12 championship game. And ultimately, some of these tiebreaker scenarios do allow Utah access into the Big 12 championship game. We'll go over some of those. But even if those scenarios don't unfold and Utah handles their business and finishes 10-2 and they stomp Baylor and they smoke K-State and they blow the brakes off of Kansas, there's a realistic scenario for them to gain access as an at-large team, even if they don't go to the Big 12 championship game. And that's where it gets interesting. Because if either BYU or Texas Tech stumbles down the stretch and gets stomped in the Big 12 championship game, and they're sitting there with 3 losses, and Utah sitting there with 2, and obviously the third loss would be in a conference championship game, all I'm saying is what the committee has told us is they value Utah a lot, and it's not out of the realm of possibility to see Utah get in as an at-large team over either BYU or Texas Tech or the loser of the Big 12 championship game. Now, the best scenario is you do see some of these things unfold that allows you access to the Big 12 championship game. You win that, and you gain access that way. Obviously, that's preferred, but that's something that is going to be reliant on things that are out of Utah's control. So point of emphasis, number 1, because one of the reasons, the Football Power Index specifically, one of the reasons they like Utah is in Utah's wins, it feels like an unfair fight. In Utah's wins over UCLA to start the year, West Virginia in conference play. I'm throwing out Cal Poly and Wyoming, respectfully. West Virginia in conference play. Arizona State, top 25 team at the time in conference play without Sam Leavitt. Colorado conference play. Cincinnati conference play. Those games have felt like the other team should not have even been on the same field as Utah. The games were essentially over at halftime. And for the FPI and the advanced metrics and the strength of the record and the strength of schedule and all those things, for them to continue to favor Utah like this, Utah has to continue to go leave no doubt over the final 3 games of the season. All right, we're back to this coming up in a little bit. Chris Camerani live in studio, but we'll talk some pro football with our friend Lindsay Rose from Sumer Sports, off and running on a Wednesday afternoon. Good to have you with us. Keep it here on ESPN 700. trade deadline came and went, and my goodness, was it busy. Lindsay Rhodes, Sumer Sports, stops by to break it all down. Hello, Lindsay. How are you?
Hi. It was the most fun day ever yesterday. I love days like that where the news is coming fast and furious and we're all sort of shocked by every headline, one right after the other. That was a blast.
I'm glad you had fun. I'm a Jets fan, so, that's where I'm at with it, Lindsay.
Well, here's the deal, though, okay? Look, it's been a rough season for you guys, and I know that nobody wants to, already talk about next year, but understanding realistically you're not really in a position to win a whole bunch of games for the rest of the season, don't you in some way want your team to be better positioned to win next year or the year after that? You got 5 first-round picks to use in the next 2 years.
Lindsay, have you seen the video going around of the young man being interviewed after the Jets loss? Have you seen that video?
No. The little kid.
The little kid, yes. Okay. Well, I am a father of I'm a father of a young man that's not too far away from that age. And when I watched that, I know people found it comedic. I was borderline emotional because that's how my son feels at this point.
I get that. I totally get that. It's obviously a tough position to be in, and I feel like this is turning into a therapy session here.
Thank you, Lindsay. I need it.
And also, I understand that it's rough to continually be in a position where you're looking towards next season. So all of that said, you have different regimes in different places that come in and kind of get a crack at trying to fix it. And I think to a degree that, obviously this year I expected it to go better than it did with Justin Fields at the helm. But since it has not gone well, the number one thing that the Jets need to find an answer to is the quarterback problem. And I think at the very least, just looking through the prism of the trade deadline yesterday, the Jets did a very good job of putting themselves in a position to have some options to go get one. Whether that's this year in the offseason via the draft or just having pieces to move to maybe go get a different type of quarterback. I'm not sure that there is one that's available for trade that I would even want to put on the Jets. But if not this year, then next year with the 3 ones, I understand that dangling that future carrot is unappealing considering the fact they've yet to hit on any of the swings that they've taken in recent years. But that's where we are at this point, right? Got to get that quarterback, and at least they have the capital to do that.
Yeah, and you make very, very valid points. And if I remove emotion, which is what you're supposed to do when you're on this side of a microphone, you look at what Detroit did in 2023 when they had 2 firsts and 2 seconds, and that's what the Jets are going to have next year. Now, to your point, they need a QB. But Detroit grabbed Jahmyr Gibbs, Jack Campbell, Sam Laporta, and Brian Branch. And that was kind of the start of this thing that a few years later, they're still one of the most talented franchises in pro football. But what does this mean from the Colts' perspective? Because, Sauce is so good and he's still so young. What do you like most about what the Colts did?
I think it's a great move for the Colts in a couple of different ways. One, well, first of all, he's a young guy who has years left on his deal, right? So you're kind of locking up somebody who you're expecting to be a good cornerback, which is a premium position, for a few years. In the short term, you're also taking advantage of the opportunity to add a very important piece to a team to try and make a run at a Super Bowl, which, the Colts have been the shock of the season. I can't believe that we're even having this conversation, but sitting atop the AFC, there they are. And to add a depth piece, not even a depth piece, but, a strengthening piece on the defensive side of the ball, I think is a really, really smart move for a number of reasons. One, I think he's a great fit in Lou Anarumo's defense, right? So what he wants to do is he wants to press and make things tough on the wide receivers and the quarterbacks. He is a prototypical press corner. You play him in press man, and you are getting the best version of him. And that is what Lou Anarumo historically has wanted to do with his quarterbacks. He's not going into a cornerback room or a defensive backfield where he's alone. You're going to get Charvarius Ward back there. And so now you're building a defense that kind of matches the things that we're seeing on offense. And then I think that there's an element here too of I think there's a lot of fans that are waiting for the other shoe to drop with Daniel Jones to a degree. And correct me if you think I'm wrong, but I think based on what we saw with Sam Darnold last year, it was so good. And then at the end of the year, it was like, oh no, at the end of the year when we really needed him to step up, the old Sam Darnold showed up, right? That now we're seeing this year that might have been a little bit of an outlier because he looks incredible again. But I think that there's a degree of like, if Daniel Jones, if the league figures him out, if the defenses start playing them differently and that becomes less of something they're able to capitalize, you just strengthened your defense to keep scores down and put yourself in a better position to have a chance to win some of these big games. I just think it's a really, really smart move by the Colts. And certainly that's the type of team, the teams that usually make trades at the deadline are teams that are hovering around 500. They're the teams that are on the borderline. Like, we're going to add a piece to help us get into the playoffs, right? I feel like the ones that I always want to make the moves are the ones that are sitting there at the top and saying, this is actually a year that could be our year to win it all. Let's go take it. And I think that the Colts kind of maybe check that box a little bit. And so I very much like the move for them.
Yeah, totally agree. And to your point about Daniel Jones, I think you're correct. I will offer this, though, because, Jets fan over here, but I've got some brothers that are Giants fans. We're a Northeast family. And I felt like oftentimes in New York, when the Giants' offensive line was actually healthy and protected him, there were moments where you're like, this guy's got something. Now, ultimately, it didn't last, but I think a lot of that, at least from my prism, Lindsay, had to do with the Giants' inability to protect him. I think if the Colts O-line continues to play the way they played, I mean, we've seen what they've done with Jonathan Taylor. I'm not saying they're going to go win the thing, but I think Daniel Jones has a chance to at least continue this on some level if he has time, if that makes sense.
I have been saying this for years where Sam Darnold in particular is concerned, and I'm a big believer in this general point in that, well, first of all, it's true for pretty much all running backs. All running backs are products of their environment, the numbers that you see, the production, the output. If they're in a bad environment behind a bad offensive line without a quarterback that can keep defenses honest and they're worried about the quarterback's ability to hit a big one downfield, the running back will not have success. We saw that with Saquon in New York, right? Very different Saquon that we saw in Philadelphia last year when the environment was very, very good. I think it's also true for a certain type of quarterback. And I think that what I said for years about Sam Darnold was that we didn't know that he was a bust yet. I had yet to see evidence that he was bad, even though the numbers were bad and people were writing him off, because there were always environmental boxes that were not checked, either poor coaching or lack of weapons or bad offensive line. There was always something there that helped explain the fact that he wasn't living up to his expectations. So in that particular case, what I thought was, the one thing I feel comfortable saying from an analysis standpoint is that he is not a tractor. He's not a quarterback like a Mahomes or a Josh Allen or a Lamar Jackson, where you put them on the field and they pull the entire offense up along with them, right? They can't carry a team. So we learned that in the first few years about Sam Darnold. And I think we learned the same thing about Daniel Jones. I think that there's a certain category of quarterback where you might not be that guy, but you might be good enough if you're in a good environment to be a good enough quarterback for that offense to succeed. I think Jared Goff is probably a good example of that in Detroit, right? Like, they've had a very good environment, tons of weapons, great coaching. Jared Goff looks good. He's certainly good enough to win with. And I think we're seeing that with Sam Darnold in Seattle. I think that this year we're seeing that with Daniel Jones in Indianapolis. I think it's something that we really, really need to consider and should be the primary lesson that we learn with the retread quarterbacks having success this year. And that is to stop throwing these guys away. Don't think of it as an excuse. Think of it as an explanation. Look at the environment in which they were, and then take a step back and decide if we want to put them in a different environment, could they have more success?
Yeah, well said. So if the Jets had not made the Sauce deal, I would not have loved the Quinnen Williams transaction in a vacuum. But because they made the Sauce Gardner deal, then you might as well go do it, because I actually think they got a tremendous amount of value from the Cowboys in exchange for Quinnen Williams. A lot of people really down on Dallas for doing this. Now, Quinnen is really, really good, but they give up a first-round pick, a second-round pick in the Mozzie Smith defensive tackle. Give me your thoughts, Lindsay, on this deal from both sides.
I didn't love it as much for the Cowboys, and I've seen people who do like it for them, and I'm not trying to The thing I don't love is that, okay, on the one hand, the positive thing is that clearly the defense is a problem, right? You've got a pretty good offense that can compete with people, and the defense cannot. I wonder if they could if they had Michael Parsons. That's a different story. But so now you are at the very least looking at a situation, you're not being complacent and you're being active and you're constantly looking for ways to make the situation better. And I give them credit for that. They did give up a lot. And I just wonder if Quinnen Williams and Logan Wilson are the pieces that are going to put them over the top. And so there's a part of me around the trade deadline where I think you're doing some calculus about like how important are the picks, how important are the players, what can we get out of the players in terms of them tilting us. If there's an element of we will still have this person to build on for the future, then it's a smart move no matter what, right? If this is a position you would need to fill in the off season, then just go ahead and fill it now if this is what helps you now and later. But the calculus for me doesn't say, yeah, go get that guy, and then the Cowboys are going to be a team to be reckoned with down the stretch. I just think that maybe they still have a few more problems on defense. They're not necessarily a team that's on my radar in a stacked NFC this year. I mean, the NFC is where the good football is being played from top to bottom. Not top to bottom, but, in terms of the teams that are likely to make the playoffs. They're strong from 1 to 7 there, and I just am not sure that I see the Cowboys breaking through that.
So Rashid Shaheed played his college ball here locally at Weber State, and we were able to watch him, and he was dynamite as a young kid, and you had already referenced Sam Darnold, and Seattle probably needs to be considered on a level, I'll speak for myself, that I didn't consider them certainly to start the year. And this, to me, is a really exciting transaction. They're already one of the hottest passing teams in pro football. They add Shaheed as a complement to Jackson Smith and Jigba. We'll see when Cooper Kupp comes back. But tell me about this transaction. And obviously, the Saints are doing what the Jets are doing as well, trying to lose intentionally,
Well, okay, but I'm going to just split hairs with the phrasing there because I think that speaks to a tanking like that word. I don't think that that's what they're doing. I don't think they're losing intentionally. I think they are intentionally building for the future.
Fair enough.
And taking advantage of the moves that they can make now as opposed to trying to lose in terms of draft position. But but going back to the Seahawks, I love this move for the Seahawks. The Seahawks have been one of the most fascinating teams for me this season because of the changes that they made in the offseason, the way that we talked about the team. People described the moves that they made and the people who left as losses, right? It was, they lost DK Metcalf and they lost Geno Smith and they lost Tyler Lockett. And the thing that never sat right with me was that they purposefully lost those people. They didn't just get outbid. They made moves to say we're going to go in a different direction, which always to a degree kind of piques my interest of like, okay, I don't see it, but clearly they're doing this on purpose. So let's withhold judgment. I love the fact that they built this roster as purposefully as they did. They're doing some really smart things with the amount of multi-tight end sets and the ways that they're using those sets to set up the pass, which is a very efficient way to move the ball down the field. They're running a ton, even though they're not running well. And they're doing that because it keeps the defense in looks that are beneficial for the passing game. So it's all like a big deception game where it looks like we might run, and we actually run so frequently that we might run, and we're kind of willing to sacrifice whatever yards we're not picking up on those runs because we're going to make them up tenfold when we hit you over the top on an explosive pass. And Darnold is number 1 in the league in EPA per deep throw this season. The Seahawks are number 1 in explosive pass play rate. This is a fascinating move to me because of that last stat group that I mentioned. Rashid Shaheed, we all know, is a burner. JSN has actually shown signs that he is playing faster this season than he has ever played on the field before. Our tracking metrics suggest that. I love the fact that this just gives them so much versatility and so many ways to really keep the defense guessing. You have one more thing that you need to account for now, and that is him streaking down the field. And I really like what McDonald's doing there in Seattle.
Away from the trade deadline, let's just talk some big picture stuff here. The NFC West, do you think Seattle should be the favorite? I mean, the Rams are there at 6-2, and we'll see what happens under center with the Niners, but a lot of people just have that much respect for Kyle to keep him in that conversation. Who do you like in the NFC West?
That is such a fun division right now. I think I'm going to stick with the Rams for the time being. They were my pick at the beginning of the season, and I think I'm going to stick with them, though it's going to be a really, really tight race with three teams all at 6 wins right now. I think that the Rams they're a very well-built team. They were fascinating how quickly they flipped the defense a couple of years ago. I think the fact that they got rid of Cooper Kupp and then brought in Devontae Adams, I think that what we saw to a degree this past offseason was an attempt to flip the offense in a short time frame too. And I just think top to bottom, they have a roster that I could see winning it all. I think Seattle is a team that I didn't necessarily think was going to be in this type of a conversation that has snuck in there. And I think that it's going to go down to the wire with those two teams. And I think that to a degree, that's a part of the reason that Seattle goes and makes this move, right? You're in a tight race. You got to be looking for extra pieces that can put you over the top. And so whatever capital you have to give up in order to bring in Rashid Shaheed, and frankly, it was a lot relatively for Rashid Shaheed. You're giving up a 4th and a 5th in this year's draft. But I think that this was a good time to pull that trigger because you're going to need all hands on deck in order to beat the Rams, I think. And San Francisco, I can't not mention them because they've been a disaster from an injury standpoint. I mean, I have so many Niners on my fantasy team that are just sitting there on the bench, can't play them, just waiting for these guys to be healthy. And yet there they are. They're still, winning games that they have no business being in, frankly, including the one that they against the Rams earlier this season that shocked me. So that one I think is the toughest division to call for me right now.
Yeah, no one cares about our fantasy teams, Lindsay, in radio, but I do play in a 2-quarterback league, and I've just settled on starting either Mac or Brock, whoever's starting for the Niners. Here's my question for you, a little advice time, all right? My my first quarterback was Jaden Daniels, who's obviously out for the year. So do I start Marcus Mariota or Aaron Rodgers the rest of the way? Those are my two options.
I mean, I want to say Mariota hasn't been terrible. Hold on. I'm pulling up some fantasy rankings right now to try and wrap my brain around this. The thing about Aaron Rodgers is that he is that low ADOT kind of kills me. Mm-hmm. It's very touchdown dependent. He's never going to put up a ton of passing yards, right, to get you to a super big number. And so you're very, very touchdown dependent on him. I think it depends, frankly, on whether or not you have McLaurin in the lineup. If the Commanders have all of their pass-catching weapons, then I might go Mariota in that case.
Okay. I need the advice.
I'm not sure that's the right answer, though.
Well, I mean, look, again, nobody cares, but I have Omarion Hampton, Malik Neighbors. It's been one of those years for me that nothing has gone right. So we can move on. We cheer for a lot of our local players here, and the Kraft injury is horrible for Green Bay because he was having such a good year. But my question about the Packers and our guy Jordan Love, who played at Utah State, is: are they good? I can't what are the Green Bay Packers good at playing football this year?
You know what's fascinating? My colleague Sam Bruckhouse, who's one of the data scientists that I work with at Sumer Sports, was just digging into some Packers research this morning and going through our Sumer scores, which is our proprietary way of evaluating each player's play, sort of as much as we can absent their environment, just taking a look at what they did on that play to contribute to the play, whether they're throwing the ball or not, that kind of stuff. And he found that Josh Jacobs is having an outstanding year, and the offensive line is not. There wasn't a single offensive lineman that scored more than an average offensive lineman score. And so it's kind of a fascinating situation where it looks like the O-line isn't playing particularly well, and going back to my point about environment being so important for running backs, it looks like Josh Jacobs is playing well despite that, which I kind of think is a very interesting snapshot of that team. If the O-line is not playing well, that concerns me in terms of the big picture. Because for me, it all starts with the offensive line. Like the Chargers, for instance, we saw the stark difference when Joe Alt was not on the field for a few weeks. I mean, you had Justin Herbert finding ways to buy time with his feet. He was scrambling a lot more than we've ever seen him scramble, which was an interesting wrinkle added to his game in light of the fact that he had to, because the pressure comes so fast. So the ways that a solid offensive line and the drop off when people do get hurt at those tackle positions in particular, but across the offensive line, the drop off is steepest there, in my opinion. Outside of quarterback, that is where you're going to lose the most. What we saw with offensive tackles who got hurt earlier in the season is that, the Chargers were one example, but just one. We saw this across the board. When you lifted that starting offensive tackle out and put a backup in for a game, that next week, that backup was one of the lowest scoring offensive tackles. I mean, just time and time again. They went from having one of the best to one of the absolute worst. The drop-off is so great at those positions. And I mean, you can think of all of the ways that protection changes everything about the offense. It changes how far you can throw downfield because you don't have time for the longer developing routes to develop, right? That's going back to Seattle. That Seattle offensive line, they spent so many draft picks on offensive linemen over the last however many years. It feels like every year we're talking about them drafting an offensive lineman, and watching them on the field this year, you look at how much time Sam Darnold has. It's just like they figured it out. They got it. They got that offensive line. So this is a long-winded way of saying, I don't know. And the volatility for the Packers kind of scares me a little bit. But there they are sitting at 5-2, and obviously they've got the pieces on defense to really be disruptors. They're a team that I'm not 100% sure what I think about them yet.
All right, Lindsay, before I set you loose, you referenced your colleague Sam Brockhouse. He joins us on a weekly basis. I asked him this earlier this week. I'm going to ask you the same. If you combined the Jets and the Giants roster, is there a playoff team there?
I don't know. What did Sam say, by the way?
He laughed and then said probably not. I mean, who's playing quarterback? You know what I mean? Like, we just start there.
Well, I mean, I kind of like Jackson Dart. I think we're just not going to get a really, really strong read on Jackson Dart this year because as soon as he entered the game and things looked optimistic, he lost everybody, right? Like, the fact that he doesn't have Malik Neighbors to throw to, and then Cam Scatteraboo leaves with an injury. Now you're putting this rookie quarterback in a position where we're trying to get a read on what he can do, and you're surrounding him with Wando Robinson.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty much it. So I'm going to say no. Though Jackson Dart would be my quarterback in that situation. If Garrett Wilson is healthy, you've got a great wide receiver. You've got Breece Hall in the backfield, so we don't even need Cam in this situation. How strong is the O-line that we could piece together? I just told you how important I think that is. I'm not sure. I'm going to say no, which is an unfortunate way of looking at it. Why'd you make me do that?
You know, as somebody who comes from a family of fans of both of these teams, we just are constantly debating about who's in a worse spot. And so I get a kick out of the fact that two franchises, they technically play in Jersey, in the number one media market in the country, have not been able to figure it out for a number of years now.
I know, but going back to the Giants, like, I actually really, really liked what I was seeing out of Jackson Dart and Cam Scatteraboo, and just even then, so they had a big game, and then the next game wasn't so good. The thing you have to always keep in mind when you're going to plug a rookie quarterback in there is that it's going to be all over the map. We're seeing that with Cam Ward. Like, we don't know if Cam Ward's going to be good or not. Like, I would never be out on Cam Ward because the Titans are a dumpster fire this year. Like, that's just, you know that it's going to be a roller coaster with a rookie, right? So but I think it just got so much harder for Jackson Dart when you start losing the pieces around him. And so we're just not going to get a chance to even get a peek at what the potential might look like until next season. We get all these pieces back around him. But those are some really good young pieces. And then going back to the Jets, again, Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall. And I'm not a big, start with the running back talent like that. I think you can probably find running backs. But the fact that they actually have a legitimately good running back in Breece Hall, I think you have certain pieces on the offense that if you were to find that quarterback and then maybe plug a couple of different holes, the whole thing just looks so different, right? So I think that the Giants have a little bit of a head start over the Jets because I think that it's possible that they do have a quarterback in Jackson Dart.
Lindsay, great stuff. Tell our listeners about Sumer Brain and where they can find all of your work.
So all of this nerdy data that I have been referencing, you can go find yourself. First of all, sumersports.com has a whole data page where you can just go in and peruse and change the filters. We've got personnel grouping filters. You can figure out where your team ranks in every possible statistical category. And then the data points that we don't have there, go to Sumer Brain, and there are links all over the Sumer Sports website to link to that. And you can plug in any question you want. If you want to know how your team is out of 12 personnel, or I was talking to a Raiders radio station yesterday. If you wanted to say, what are the Raiders' tendencies with Brock Bowers when they're in 12 personnel? How often is he pass blocking, or how often is he run blocking? How often is he running a route? What is any kind of deep data question? Plug it all into the question, and then it will spit out all of that data for you. The types of route tendencies, what routes wide receivers run most frequently. I like it for fantasy. We have a fantasy component as of this week with League Sync capabilities. And I like to go in and ask all of the defensive questions about the matchups that my fantasy players are facing this week, rather than doing a straight, should I start this guy or this guy? I ask about the defensive environment that those guys are going to be in, and then I help frame my choice that way, because we all can look at projections like you did. We talked about with the Marcus Mariota and Aaron Rodgers. I would suggest you go in and you plug in their defensive matchups and ask very specific questions about things that will lead to Aaron Rodgers or Marcus Mariota having success this week, and you'll get a better idea of the environment that they're going to be in. It's a really fun tool to go in and kind of play around in if you are interested in getting more information than just pick that guy over that guy.
Great stuff, Lindsay. Thanks for the time. Enjoy the week and the games ahead, and we'll get you back on soon.
Thank you for having me, guys.
Lindsay Rhodes, Sumer Sports. Well, at least she didn't call me Porter. All right.
Thanks, guys.
Like our guy, what was his name? Pete Nystrom. That's his name?
He's got the most memorable name, so I hope you keep this bit. You have to bring him on, see if he gets mad. Bring him on as like Frank or something.
I feel like a guy named Thor is a wild card. I don't know that I want to upset anyone named Thor.
Drives from Minnesota and kicks your ass.
Indeed. I can throw these things if I need to, Porter.
Hey,
you're
Game Day Men's Health.
Game Day Men's Health.
Looking good.
We'll tell you more about it coming up. Chris Kamrani, my goodness, live in studio for an entire hour right here on ESPN 700. big day yesterday. If you are a Utah fan, if you are a BYU fan, if you are a fan of the Big 12 Conference, the college football playoff rankings were released. The first iteration of the CFP released last night, right after we said goodnight, because remember, we go live until 6 every single night with no exceptions. Joining us live in studio, covers college football for the Athletic. I almost said Atlantic. Maybe one day the Atlantic is in your future, Chris Camerani.
Joke / reality. For a very long time, my dad told everybody that I worked for the Atlantic because,
He honestly didn't know the difference, or just to slip up there?
I mean, maybe just more proud. Maybe the Atlantic has a little more prestige in his mind. But he's since corrected himself.
Is he a Atlantic subscriber?
No.
He's not?
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
But he knows about it.
Okay.
A little more prestige than sports.
Fair enough. Do you want to talk Election Day yesterday at all, or we can move on from it?
I mean, the polls speak for themselves in this country.
The polls speak for themselves.
Shout out though, but for real though, like shout out to our folks running elections on the local level. Because listen, man, I can't think of a more thankless job. A lot of those are volunteer on a voluntary basis.
Mm-hmm.
Shout out to everybody, and I mean that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thankless job, certainly in the modern day and age of elections. Anyway, Chris, how are you, buddy?
I'm good. How are you, man?
I'm good. So throughout the course of the past few weeks, really after the BYU-Utah game, when BYU beat Utah, I've been referencing S&P Plus and Football Power Index.
Is this your victory lap?
Look, I get a lot of things wrong. I get a lot. No, all this is actually listening to what the new committee said they were going to use, digging into that data, and starting to notice a trend where it's like they like Utah a lot more than the AP or the coaches. At least it felt like it, according to the metrics. And look, I think it's a good day for BYU. I think it's a good day for the Big 12, but I think it's a really good day for Utah as we see them at 13, which is 4 spots higher than either the AP or the coaches poll, which leads to a lot of different paths that could actually get them in either the Big 12 championship game or the college football playoff. I mean, they need help, and they've got to win out. But your reaction to Utah at 13?
Yeah, I was stunned. Immediate takeaway is if Utah wins out, they're probably in, which is crazy to say, regardless of whether or not they get a Big 12 championship game berth. I know you've been talking about the S&P in recent weeks. The only S&P I know about is the S&P 500.
That's because you're a finance guy. You're a big finance guy.
I don't know anything about that. The way we dive into the minutia of these week-to-week schedules and resumes on a year-to-year basis is insane.
Mm-hmm.
Because just going back, I mean, if we're going to go back in the time machine, going back to the BCS era when you would bing bong and put it in the algorithm and put it into the Windows 98 system and it gave you however many teams were worthy.
Yeah.
Insane to think that was in somewhat recent history. But now that we're here, it is interesting to see the committee oddly prioritizing style points so early, manners of wins. I'm always going to be the guy that says, like, if you're undefeated, like, you deserve to be as high as anybody, no matter what, which team, good or bad, took you to the wire, or which team, good or bad, you had to come from behind on. But yeah, if you're a Utah fan, you have to be elated. Seriously,
elated is the term. Let's be clear. Yeah.
I mean, Utah has 3 very difficult games left, and Utah has played well against bad teams. Now, some of these teams that are still left on the schedule aren't bad, but they've all underperformed.
Yes, that's
especially
fair.
The Kansas schools.
That's fair.
Because I think Kansas State and Kansas were looked at as as part of the upper echelon of the Big 12 coming into this season. A trip to Baylor can be tricky. Sawyer Robertson's playing well, but at the end of the day, yeah, if you're a Utah fan, you have to be elated because you control your own destiny, essentially.
Yeah, and to your point about the final 3 games, and look, Utah has been favored in every game they've played, even Tech and BYU and Provo. They were the Vegas favorite to win the games. We'll see what the lines look like when Utah's back at it after this bye week, but my guess is they're going to be favored. in all these games moving forward. Definitely K-State at home, and my guess would be Kansas on the road. Maybe the Baylor line will be a little bit tricky. Baylor is also on a bye this week, and then they're going to take on, of course, Utah at home. But one of the reasons the FPI likes Utah a lot specifically, and if this really is a metric that the committee is using, and based off of what they did last night, it does appear they're using this metric. One of the reasons the FPI likes Utah is in their wins, it's not a fair fight.
Runaway.
So in order for Utah to continue to rise in that metric, or at least stay top 6 is where they're at right now, which is crazy that they're in the top 6 with 2 losses. You can't go to Baylor and win 17-13. You can't beat K-State 20-17. You can't beat Kansas 13-10. Like, they're going to have to do to Baylor, K-State, and Kansas what they've done to Cincinnati, Colorado, Arizona State, West Virginia, UCLA. I'll leave Cal Poly and Wyoming out of it. How
dare you?
They're just going to have to go completely smoke all 3 of these teams if they want to be valued in this metric that is allowing them to rise in a way that not a lot of people thought they would.
Well, which is a metric that has set them up to be in the place that they're at now.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Here's one thing I'll say. The stress, anxiety, excitement, maybe anger is going to reach a fever pitch in the next few weeks in our state, because we've reached a point now. We have both of our major college football teams within the top 15 in the CFP rankings, and we've entered this realm now of subjectivity.
Mm-hmm.
You are going to potentially see teams rise and fall based on results that, you know, BYU and Utah have on a week-to-week basis, and then results based on the teams that they've played already have had.
Mm-hmm.
And not even to mention the teams that are nearby them. So everybody buckle up, as your guy says, because like it's going to get wild around here.
Yeah.
It really is. So yes, Utah will have to continue to prove to the committee that they can beat average teams and beat them pretty well. Beat them handily. I think ASU, Colorado, and Cincy changed the mindset of a lot of folks.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, these folks aren't dumb. They know that ASU was without Sam Leavitt. They know that Colorado is not a good team. The Cincy win is far and away the best win on their resume this year. And
I agree with that.
You'll probably finish the season with that as your best win on the resume. You have to hope Cincy handles its stuff from here on out too. And that's the whole. You're going to be scoreboard watching ad nauseum for the rest of November.
Yeah, that's the odd dynamic, and in a way, it behooves Utah fans to get on the BYU bandwagon a little bit.
I wholeheartedy agree.
I know that's uncomfortable, but like if BYU goes down to Lubbock and they're a 10-point underdog, one sports book has them as a 10.5-point underdog, so it's a double score.
Vegas does not trust true freshman quarterbacks, no matter how many wins.
Nor do they trust BYU, who, by the way, has blown away most every line that's been set against them this year for the most part. So it's a tough task for Brigham Young to go to Lubbock and get the win. But if they go smoke Tech on Saturday, handle their business, and somehow the tiebreaker works in Tech's favor where they're back in the Big 12 championship game, and if BYU smokes Tech again, and Tech has, well, I guess Tech would have 3 losses and Utah would have 2. Yeah. There's this pathway where Utah doesn't even need to make the Big 12 championship game to get into the CFP, which isn't something I saw coming until yesterday.
Or glass half empty, potentially. If that's the case, do you potentially see the Big 12 only get one team in if you have a groundswell of SEC teams come on late, if you have the Big 10 respond despite having a shaky start? Like, BYU, Tech, and Utah have benefited from the Big Ten being down this year. I think that is a huge component of this whole thing.
Yeah, they're top-heavy, aren't they?
And even, Penn State fell off the map. Oregon has had not a single really impressive win.
So the committee told us that they don't like Oregon as much as the AP.
Correct. Yeah. So they come in at 9, and they have Iowa on the road. It looks like it might snow at Iowa this weekend, so it might be another tricky game for them. But this is not like it was last year, where you had 4 teams that were absolutely in Ohio State, Indiana, Penn State, and Oregon. Now, that could change in the coming weeks, but right, and not to mention Michigan is nowhere part of this either. So it's like the Big 12 is benefiting from a down year for the Big 10, but I don't know how things can shake out. I don't see it shaking out so drastically that the Big 12 doesn't get at least 2 from where things stand now. But we're also not taking into account will a Group of 5 team rise? Will a South Florida get into the mix at 11 or 12? Like these are, and this is the politicking part of this whole thing, is be prepared for a lot of subjectivity because that's going to play a role in the coming weeks.
Yeah, and you have to continue to try to understand what this new committee is looking at as they rank these teams. And Ohio State, Indiana, 2 Big Ten teams at the top. To your point, the Big Ten is just top heavy. Oregon at 9, which is 3 spots lower than the AP had them. Notre Dame at 10 with 2 losses. It's that's where you get into the whole like brand bias stuff. They lose to Miami, who lost to SMU. Baylor beat SMU. I mean, and you've always said this, like it will play itself out.
It will.
And Oregon will have opportunities to get some good wins. And then you look at Texas at 11, even though they're 7-2, they've got a bear of a schedule the rest of the way. So if you think Texas is a fraud, they will be exposed. If you think Texas is validated at 11, they will validate you if they win these games.
Correct.
But one of the things I like about Texas at 11, I don't like soft non-con schedules. One of the things that I look forward to if we ever do get into the college football space that looks like the NFL is great games every weekend and no Cal Polys, all due respect, no Idaho States. So what the committee said is, yes, Texas lost their opening game, but they're not really penalizing them because it was at the Horseshoe against Ohio State.
And it wasn't a blowout.
Correct.
It wasn't a great game, but it was a close game.
But that's another thing that they're clearly, like, even if we go back to Utah, what they're saying is we value BYU at 7, we value Texas Tech at 8, and those are your only 2 losses. So we believe, and I hate the term good losses. I don't love that term, but
that's Utah's saving grace right now.
But and that's what the committee is clearly saying. Like, we are not. It's not a punitive thing that you lost to 2 teams that we believe are legitimately top 8 teams in the country.
Yeah, the only thing that I could potentially see being a thorn in Utah's side is getting smoked at home to Texas Tech at some point down the line. And at that point, if BYU and Tech play 2 close games theoretically this weekend, and again if they meet in the Big 12 title game, I think that could potentially be tough for Utah.
I agree 100%. I'll go a step further. I think that's a death knell.
Yeah, and even if they split, I think like in a weird way, I feel like you want whoever wins Saturday to win. If in theory these 2 teams meet again, I think you want them to win the title game as well.
Yeah, there's some tiebreaker scenarios that actually could get Utah in, depending on what happens, namely BYU Cincinnati. Now, obviously, Saturday is a massive game, but if BYU loses against Tech, that Cincinnati game looms large. I think
huge, and it's on the road, too.
It is. I think BYU is a better team, but it is at Cincinnati's place. But if we move over into the BYU portion of this conversation, are you surprised? Because when it comes to, again, these advanced metrics that don't value Brigham Young the way the AP does, or even the way the CFP committee does, and we'll just continue to kind of nail this down, the S&P Plus, Bill Conley's predictive measure, has BYU at 16 right now. The Football Power Index has BYU at 14 right now. So 16 S&P Plus, 14 Football Power Index, and a double-digit underdog on the road, Chris, is saying there are a lot of people that still have serious questions about how good BYU is.
I think it honestly starts with the fact that they're being led by a true freshman quarterback. Like, let's not forget that Utah was favored at BYU earlier this year.
Yes, they were.
And I know wasn't it like 3.5? So it was kind of like it was like 50-50 at that point.
On a neutral field, kind of a wash. Yeah.
Exactly. But 10.5 is a lot. Baron Morton hasn't played all that great. He's been hurt a lot this year. The kid that came in and smoked Utah, Will Hammond, tore his ACL.
Out for the year, yeah.
So it's like I think the committee is looking at this weekend for BYU being like, this is your prove-it game. If you win, regardless of what happens this weekend, BYU should be able to jump, the Mississippis, the Georgias, and the Alabamas.
Yeah,
in next week's ranking.
I mean, results have to matter. Like, just being able to win, no matter how you do it, has to matter. I use the line all the time when we get lost in, to use your term of the day, the minutia of how we're analyzing these things and whether or not you need to use analytics or whether or not you need to do something. Like, okay, fine. The nice thing about sports is that we have a scoreboard, and that always has to be the bottom line. But with what the committee is telling us, as far as this group of people that still have questions about BYU, they're penalizing them for playing a close game against Colorado. They're penalizing them for playing a close game against Arizona. Look, Ames is a tough place to win no matter what, but Iowa State this year is below 500 in conference and 5-4 on the season. So Utah is smoking the bad teams. BYU is playing close games against the bad teams, and I do think that is what leads people to have these questions, even though BYU has handled business, and the bottom line is they're still clean.
Yeah. Could you imagine if we had this type of resume fine-tooth combing during Utah's 2008 season when they were barely beating a bunch of bad teams before they got their chance?
And finished number 2 in the country that year.
And finished number 2 in the country, but like the committee would have been like, oh, barely won at New Mexico?
Right.
Like, trying to think, barely won at Air Force? Like, I get it. Like, let's understand what the committee is trying to do. They have a very difficult job. But if a team's 8-0 through the first week in November, like I think they've proven themselves to be where they deserve to be. Now their schedule's backloaded, like whereas a lot of teams had to, face the brunt of theirs. In the SEC, I understand different beast. It means more. They have to, mollywop each other every single week. That is the way it goes. But I think this is BYU's test from the committee standpoint.
I agree. Now, let me move over here because we had your buddy Gordon Monson in studio yesterday. And, I think Gordon speaks for a lot of people when he says there's a clear bias against the Big 12. I'm not one of those people.
What was his point?
So the point is BYU's undefeated. Why are they behind teams that have one loss like Alabama, Georgia, Ole Miss? The point is the Big 12 doesn't seem to get the same sort of attention, whether it's the AP or the coaches poll, when it comes to the teams that are ranked ahead of them, even if you only have one loss or you're undefeated. I am one who simply believes that the majority of the best teams in college football play their football in the Big 10 and the SEC.
Easily.
And to me, that's it. Like, I can put it, like, we can even go to break. Like, that's just my, that's what I believe to be the case.
And if we're being logical, if we're being objective, if you were to put, no matter how the season shakes out, if you were to put BYU or Utah on a neutral field against the likes of Alabama or Georgia, if you had to bet your money, but that's why the games are played.
That's why the games are played, and it's why that 2008 team, even though I believe 2004 was the superior football team, and my friends on 2008 don't like it when I say that, the 2008 team will always be remembered in a very specific way because the Sugar Bowl win was against Alabama and Nick Saban.
Yeah, it wasn't against Tyler Palco and the Pitt Panthers.
Right. Like,
bring that up to Sean. Sean's still mad that they weren't able to get a better team.
Well, I think
and
is that the replacements quarterback?
That's Shane Falco. But good pull, Porter.
Well,
both lefties, by the way.
I can remember 2004 watching the team, and I was in media at the time, but only part-time on Saturdays. And as we were watching that team grow and evolve, I think the redeeming belief here was they could play against anybody that season. And when the bowl matchups were starting to be announced, if I remember correctly, and Porter might be able to remember for me, even though he was like 2 at the time, I think it was USC and Auburn that year. They were awesome.
Yep, I think Oklahoma too.
Okay, and then when it's Fiesta against Pitt, everybody was like, they're going to smoke them. It's not going to be close.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, we'll never really know how good that 2004 team was because we never saw them matched up against what I would perceive to be one of the top 4 or 5 teams in the country.
In front of it is it controls its own destiny.
Yeah.
That is the beauty of what this team has right now. But I'm not comparing seasons because I think that's for a specific portion of folks who really like to dive into the minutia.
Mm-hmm.
But Utah's found itself in positions where it's had to win before. I won't bring up. I guess I will bring up the first year in the Pac-12 where all you have to do is beat a bad Colorado team and you go to the Pac-12 title game.
Yep.
That was 14, 15 years ago. But one thing I will say if Utah will be able to win these next 3 games, they will be forced to do it in a way that they haven't won games so far. I don't think you'll be able to run for 250 or 300 yards against Baylor, Kansas State, and Kansas 3 weeks in a row. I think the Kansas State game at home, weirdly, is like maybe the toughest matchup for them. That's a team that's underperformed, but it's a team that I think just matches up well with Utah stylistically. If Utah's going to be able to finish the season with 3 straight wins and keep its name in contention for a college football playoff berth, I still need to see Devin Dampier go out and win them a game with his arm. And he hasn't had to do it yet. And BYU, they weren't able to get it done. So I just think that if you're going to be a college football playoff team in 2025, you have to have your quarterback go out and beat somebody in the air. That's my opinion.
Yeah, look, there's really not a lot I could offer as a rebuttal there. So, look, when you look at the CFP rankings, well, I'll throw the AP in there because whatever, but the CFP rankings are really all
the AP poll so much.
Well, all that matters now is the college football playoff rankings. Does. You know. But I'm, this is leading me to a point. So if you look at the CFP rankings, if you look at the AP, they believe BYU is the best team in the Big 12. If you look at Football Power Index, they believe Texas Tech is the best team in the Big 12. If you look at S&P Plus, they believe Utah is the best team in the Big 12. Who do you believe the best team in the Big 12 is right now?
Oh, I would say BYU.
Because they're undefeated. Because they've answered every question.
Because they're undefeated. In the manner in which, I'm just like a believer of I don't care how you win games.
Just win.
Just win.
Yeah.
And I weirdly think it takes a lot of cojones to be able to even go down 14-0 on the road to a bad Colorado team, come back and win. I mean, they were basically dead in the water at Arizona. I mean, they were down 10 with 12 minutes to go, come back and win double overtime, down 14. At Iowa State a couple weeks ago.
LJ gets hurt.
LJ gets hurt.
I thought they were cooked, dude. I thought they were done.
Just saying, that's the beauty of why we get to watch these teams play. This game this Saturday it's massive. I think Texas Tech is very good, and they have the ability to show up and blow a team out if they play, firing on all cylinders. But I don't think they're world beaters, and I don't think BYU is either. I just don't think – I said this at the beginning of the season, and I think you agree with me. The Big 12 is just the new version of the Pac-12. Mm-hmm. It is what it is, man. Get used to it. The cannibals are out. It's zombie season, and it's always going to be like that until you are able to establish a hierarchy the way the Big Ten and the SEC has. And I don't know if that's on the horizon anytime soon.
Rank the top 3 teams of the Big 12 in order.
BYU, Texas Tech, Utah.
So Texas Tech allows 76 yards per game on the ground. They're the best rushing defense in the conference, and it's honestly not that close. BYU is second in the conference. Utah's first. Yards per game, 216 per. That to me is where this comes down. Mm-hmm. That's the main area that this matchup on Saturday is continued upon. It's an early kick, which can get a little funky. LJ's going to play. Do you have confidence BYU can go down there and get another, portion of luck on their side and capitalize on opportunities and find a way to get this done?
50-50 game for me, especially. I think if this was at Lavelle Edwards Stadium, I'd be comfortable saying BYU gets it done. I just, this will probably be, this will be Bear Bachmeier's most difficult test to date. It'll be, if we're talking metrics, it'll be the best defensive line that he's faced, even better than Utah. If we're talking about, being able to slow down the rushing attack, which he plays a huge role in. I think it's going to turn into a game like Iowa State, honestly. I don't think that, considering where LJ Martin was a couple weeks ago, I'm going to guess, and this is just a guess, that he's not going to be able to carry the ball 20 to 25 times in a game like this.
And the Sione Moa kid is still out.
Correct.
His backup.
Yep. So maybe Bear can find some magic and find a way to continue to keep this thing going. I think they have it in them. I just think, for me, it's a coin flip game.
I do think there's more pressure on Tech than there is BYU.
Oh, without a doubt.
It's
at home.
Yeah.
Everybody can't stop talking about Cody Campbell.
You've already lost?
You've already lost. Utah's breathing down your neck, in theory, even though you do have the tiebreaker. Yeah, I agree.
And if BYU goes to Lubbock, and let's say it's 34-31, and Tech kicks a game-winning field goal at the horn, if the committee is going to continue to be consistent about what they're telling us of these two teams, maybe we just see them flip next week. Maybe Texas 7 and BYU's 8. I don't see some precipitous fall if BYU goes to Lubbock and throws punches with them. Now, if they get got and they get smoked, that's a different thing. But I think even going down there and showing well and losing a close game, covering the spread or what have you, if the committee continues to be consistent about their belief of who these two teams are, I don't think you'll see a big fall for BYU.
You shouldn't. There are a couple factors here. If Oregon wins at Iowa, which the committee will prioritize because it's a Big Ten matchup. Iowa's 20th. Oregon's 9th. You mentioned Texas. If BYU loses a close game to Texas Tech, they should not fall out of the top 10. Let's just say that.
Yeah, this weekend, Texas A&M gets Mizzou, but Mizzou's quarterback is out for the year. The Oregon-Iowa game will be massive. But there's LSU, Bama.
Who does Notre Dame have this
Navy.
weekend? Okay.
Navy 7-1.
Just barely lost their first game of the year.
Yeah, Navy 7-1. But I'll go back to the point, and you always talk about this, as much as we want to clutch our pearls about who is in the wrong place, the rest of the way will manifest what happens when it comes to who's actually in. Texas gets Georgia after a bye week, Arkansas at home, and they close against A&M. So they've got two top 5 teams on their schedule the rest of the way. So if you're the person that believes Texas is getting the benefit of the doubt, just be patient. And if they're a fraud, they'll be exposed. And if they're legit, they'll get in. The ACC looks like a one bid league this year, man. Virginia, the highest ranked team at 14, and they just got beat by.
No, they just barely beat Cal.
They barely beat Cal.
Yep.
Who's their one loss to? Is it NC? I don't think it's a great loss.
It's not a conference loss. I forget who they lost.
NC State. Yeah, they lost to NC State, but not a conference game because it was scheduled before the conference chaos.
Get out of here with this stuff.
It's true. I mean,
get out of here with this stuff.
Yeah, so they technically lost.
It's like when Utah technically had a Big 12 home win under its belt when they beat Baylor last year, but it wasn't.
Right. Exactly. So, like, NC State is in the ACC, but the game against Virginia was scheduled before the conference realignment. So Virginia technically is undefeated in conference play. And, Wake Forest, Duke, Va Tech the rest of the way. There's a good chance Virginia finishes 11-1 and 8-0 in conference, but how good are they? It does look like the ACC this year will be the league that gets one team in.
I agree. I think, ironically, NC State just handed Georgia Tech its first ACC loss over the weekend.
Right.
I think if you're looking at who gets in there, I think it's either Virginia or Georgia Tech at this point.
Yeah, it's interesting. All right, we'll catch a quick break. Chris Camerani live in studio for another segment. We're going to bring in Tony Parks today. We'll get into the 5 o'clock hour of the show. It's a busy Wednesday show, a lot to do, so keep it right here on ESPN 700. Tom Petty, question mark. Chris Kamrani, Tom Petty, question mark.
Porter Larson, exclamation mark.
Are you a fan of Tom
Oh,
Petty?
yes, I am.
Yeah, I like a little Tom Petty. May he rest in peace. Chris Kamrani live in studio. When's the last time you wrote a handwritten letter?
This is so weird you bring this up because one of my colleagues at The Athletic wrote a story this week about the benefits of writing handwritten letters.
Okay.
And through telling it through the prism of coaches and recruiting and stuff.
Huh.
You should I'll send it to you.
I'll
it's
read
really
it.
good. It's written by Austin Meek. It's told through the lens of Buzz Williams, college basketball coach.
Sure.
A full letter, man. I'm so embarrassed that my handwriting's always been bad, but like lately when I write, I'm like, oh man, like I'm going back to like elementary, middle school. Like I need to get on it.
I don't even want to show you my handwriting. Now, I used to have really good handwriting. I was taught how to write in cursive as a kid.
Oh, yeah?
I don't know if that's a skill that people even...
Well, yeah, I had to learn that too, yeah.
So I had to learn cursive, and my grandma wrote beautiful letters. Oh, what's the term for like the certain type of...
Calligraphy?
Calligraphy.
I got you.
Look at you.
I got you.
Have you ever been on Jeopardy? I feel like you'd be good at Jeopardy. You have so many useless facts in that head of yours.
Correct. That's all I have.
It's not all useless.
It's primarily useless.
But my grandma used to write like that, so she kind of taught me how to do it. But this job has ruined my handwriting because I go through so many yellow legal pads.
Yeah.
And all I do is take notes when I'm watching shows or watching games. And it's because of the science of writing to memorize so I can talk about it. It is not the science of writing so someone else could read it.
So my problem is I think COVID changed this. Before, I would always carry around the old school thin reporter's, notepad, take notes at games.
Yeah.
Had to do it back when I was covering preps, covering Porter Larson, wide
Shout
receiver,
out.
South Summit. But once COVID rolled around, I realized that the notes app in your phone to me is just as easy. One less thing to carry around.
Yeah.
So like when I'm sent on assignment, whether it's, going to Provo to talk to Kalani or going to Hawaii to hang out with Trevor Riley, I'm just doing the notes app. So my handwriting is terrible. I need to get on it.
Or going up to the Hill to talk to a U coach, or are you faster on your phone or on a keyboard? Now, actually, you're the wrong guy to ask this to because you're a writer. I am so much faster on my phone. Like if I need to send an email,
it's keyboard 10 times.
Yeah.
So the Washington Post did a story, I think, exceptionally well, and they did it especially for people like you and me, but maybe more for me. Apparently, there's a group of people who are Gen X and
older millennials. You're
older
an older
millennials,
millennial, yeah.
Who don't like making big life decisions on their phone. Don't like buying airplane tickets on their phone. Have to do it on their computer.
You're speaking my language.
Okay, I'm going to send you this link.
Speaking my language.
So my friends and I have had this conversation how, like, yes, you can do text, you can do social media, but if you have to log into your Rocky Mountain Power and look over your bill, you're not doing it on your phone. You got to do it on your computer.
I feel seen and heard.
Thank you. Me too.
That is me. That is me for sure.
10 times out of 10.
And I've never known why. I've honestly felt like it's a weird angle for me only. It's like a weird dynamic.
I think it's maybe you're able to expedite things, like you mentioned, like being able to do things faster. But if you're faster on your phone, that is interesting.
Well, I'm faster, like you brought up notes. So if I have to send an email, which thank goodness for this job I really never have to do, I'll pull up the notes app, write it on my notes app, and then send it over to my email and send it that way.
You're an insane person.
Okay.
I do not. I hate responding or sending emails on my phone.
Huh. See, for some reason, I'm faster on my phone than I am
this
just
is
typing.
Sports Talk Radio, man.
We just did 40 minutes on the CFP rankings.
We did.
So everybody calm down. And you know what? Now we're moving over to the lads.
Let's do it,
It's
man.
time for the lads. We'll do a quick couple of minutes on the lads here. So Jason Christ, it was announced last week. Fortune favors the bold. That's what I like to say.
Sure.
Fortuitous. I don't
get it.
Mind.
Get it.
I can't. I don't know what it is. I'll look it up. He would be mad at me for not remembering it.
He would be.
He becomes the first ever president of everything.
Soccer operations.
Soccer ops for both the Royals and RSL. And I asked him on the show, I'm like, is Pablo the coach next year? He's like, I can't say that. I don't know.
That was surprising.
I was surprised. He was mad at me later on for asking the question. He made that very clear. But Pablo is the coach now for, I think it's a 2-year extension. I think it's next year and the year after. And look, a couple things. I mean, 5 years of playoff berths doesn't seem like a lot, but it's the longest streak in Major League Soccer. Now, they haven't won a playoff game since the famous, like, park the bus Seattle type thing. Yeah.
Yep.
Was that the year of the DeMiracle?
I believe it was.
Okay,
yeah.
shout out DeMiracle. So let's just start with Pablo. What do you make of them bringing him back?
It makes sense. He has a lot of clout with the front office and the ownership group. He's universally beloved by everybody in the organization. He's maneuvered choppy waters, safe to say. Maybe that's an understatement as a head coach, and got them to the playoffs 5 years in a row. But you're, like you mentioned, you're not remembered for losing in penalty kicks 3 straight years. You're remembered for making deep playoff runs, and I think that's what the next phase of what this roster needs to look like. It needs to accomplish. Like you need to nail transfer windows, as Jason said pretty succinctly last week. You can't really afford to miss anymore, especially because it sounds like the Millers are willing to spend quite a bit of money this winter transfer season, as you should. This is the primary transfer window, Spence, where you have to spend a lot of money.
Totally agree.
Like the margin, like RSL lived on the margins for too long, and they painted themselves into a corner last year with the departure of Chicho Arango, Gomez, Crooks, your guy.
Crooks is my guy.
Crooksy?
Matty
Is
Crooks?
Crooksy not your guy?
Matty Crooks is my guy.
Okay.
Miss Matty.
Anderson Julio.
My guy
gone.
for sure. Ando is what I call him.
You have to be able to go out and spend $10 to $12 million this transfer window.
At least.
I think.
Right?
I think. And they've talked about how, I know we haven't got there yet. You're asking me about Pablo, but anytime Pablo's been given a good roster, he's done well.
Mm-hmm.
And he had a good roster before Andres Gomez was sold,
Mm-hmm.
and before it all kind of started to circle the drain.
Why do you think, outside of the fact that soccer fans are miserable, why do you think...
Is it only soccer fans? Because I know...
College football fans.
Okay, thank you.
College football fans and soccer fans are constantly miserable.
New York Jets fans?
Yes.
Yes.
If you're a fan of the New York football Jets. But college football fans and soccer fans seem to be constantly miserable.
Sure.
The portion, and look, I'm not one that goes in the comments. I'm not one that looks at the mentions. But the feedback online about Pablo getting the extension seems to be overwhelmingly negative when it comes to the reaction of the fan base. What are your thoughts there?
I think in a weird way, Pablo is always going to be unfairly measured up to his new boss, because you're always going to be compared to the golden era of whatever club you root for. If you're lucky enough to have a golden era, RSL fans might be miserable and might be up in arms that Pablo's back, but they should be lucky enough to have a championship under their belt and understand that for 4 or 5 years they were one of the best teams in the league. And this is a league where, like, you can get there. That's what I'm saying, is like you don't necessarily need to undergo a slow rebuild, so to speak. If you hit on a few players and complement the bones of what you already have, you can make a run. Like, you can join the Seattle. There's no reason why RSL shouldn't be mentioned in the same breath of the Seattles.
Mm-hmm.
LAFC, different conversation.
Yeah.
Miami, different conversation. But I think fans are always going to look at Pablo as the guy who got into it with your dad. I think they're going to look.
Just that memory is so funny.
They're
me.
going to look at him as a guy who isn't going to be able to measure up to the glory days. When I would say that outside of Jason Kreis, he's the second best coach that you've ever had. Like,
shout out John Ellinger. Shout out Mike Petke.
Pablo we should have asked Trey this. Pablo might have more postseason appearances as RSL's head coach as Jason.
I think he does. And they set the single season record for points last year.
So if it's not this, it's got to be within like 1 or 2 seasons. If it's not, my point is he's swimming upstream in that sense, but all is forgiven, so to speak, when you get good players, deploy them the right way, and play a fascinating style of soccer. That's it.
And your earlier point is very important and needs to be underscored. And I even had him on at the end of the year, and I said, would you like just one season with calm waters? Just one season without an ownership transfer? With one season without your 5 best attacking players ripped out from underneath you, without accurate
like
reinforcements being brought in?
Right.
You know, like, shout out to Gozo, who played well this year, and some of the players that, you know, were able to kind of step in and But Piol and who was the other homie that was brought in?
Your guy, Forster,
a Yago or whatever, who just
Yep.
looked like he didn't know what he was doing. Like, if I'm Pablo, if I put myself in Pablo's shoes, I'm pretty proud of the job I've done based off of all the challenges I've had with lack of support from ownership. Now, we'll see if that changes with the Millers, or a front office that
has also been somewhat of a revolving
mitigated
door.
disaster over the past few transfer windows, which brings me to Kurt. And look, Elliott's a friend of mine, but Elliott put together a good team, and they fired him. And Kurt, to me, has swung and missed on the past 3 transfer windows outside of Cabral, who's been good. You know, I think Olatunji's got something, but they also gave Kurt an extension. What are your thoughts on that?
My guess would be that, I mean, this is Jason's call at this point.
Correct.
Everybody needs to understand that if Jason didn't want these guys, he's been given carte blanche to be able to make the moves that he wants.
Yep.
If he didn't want these guys in charge, he would have made a change. He knows Kurt really well too. Like, let's not forget that he worked with Kurt in Miami when they were getting that, franchise off the ground. I just think that Jason understands that beyond Kurt individually, the scouting department, the recruiting department, that can no longer be a bare bones operation.
Correct.
He said that as much.
He did.
Like
he
said that, like, if you're going to be competing with the big dogs, like, you need people grinding tape. You need guys watching the Bulgarian league at night. You need guys watching Latvian leagues. You need a lot of people to have eyes all over the world. And historically, RSL's talent scouting department has been very small. I mean, once upon a time, it was Andy Williams, the legend.
Yeah, shout out Obama.
And he brought a lot of talented players to the front desk of guys like Garth and Craig Weibel. But, like, you're in an era now that you have to be able to expand and evolve. And if you're not doing those types of things, you're going to end up, like, not even in the back page of the newspaper. You're not even going to be in the newspaper.
Yeah, and Jason shared that, and I didn't really even know this, that for the past couple of years, the scouting department has kind of been Kurt, and that's kind of it.
Overworked.
And he's the one that's been flying around alone. So I don't want to come too hard at Kurt, because I actually like Kurt, and people behind the scenes will tell you that he has great relationships with agents. And he's very good at negotiating contracts. Like Jason himself said, when I saw the details of some of the contracts Kurt has negotiated, I told him what a great job he had done. And I love Jason, but when it comes to negotiating with agents about players, the emotional side of him might get involved, right? And he might, gently offend somebody and potentially lose out on a deal.
He just needs to play UB40.
Red wine on repeat, but maybe you can send Kurt into a room to negotiate a deal.
Good cop, bad cop.
Yeah, something like that. And then Jason also announced on the show they're very close to announcing a hire of a head of scouting.
Yeah,
who can take some of the stuff off of Kurt's plate.
What you need. I mean, listen, you've played FIFA. I've played FIFA.
Love it. Miss it.
Go Dynasty mode.
Wish I was playing
You're
more.
You're scouting the world,
100%.
man. And it's not just you. You have your miscreants. You have your little minions out looking for diamonds in the rough. It's time for RSL's kind of entire, like, infrastructure from a front office standpoint to escape the kind of the dark ages. You need to be able to give people more adequate resources. And by resources, I don't mean just money. I mean, like, bodies. I mean, capable people who can come together and work together. Like, it can no longer be Jason, Kurt, and Tony Beltran. Like, you probably need 6 to 7 more people. And that's not even, and maybe not even counting the Royals. Like, if we're talking about the Royals, you probably need to add the same amount on that side too.
Yeah. And if we're honest, to underscore your point, for too many years, and I know this for a fact, somebody would leave the organization, and then the ownership would say, okay, their responsibility is now on your plate. And by the way, you're not getting a raise. You're just absorbing their workload. You're
no longer working 80 hours a week. You're working 120 hours.
And we're not paying you anymore.
Yep.
Some of that has happened with the Jazz, actually, quite frankly, with the hockey team coming here, and suddenly employees have additional responsibilities without getting a raise.
Tusks up.
So, shout out. When it comes to the modern approach that the Millers need to take, you're right. You have to expand the organization. You have to get more bodies, and you have to pay people to do their jobs.
RSL does have they're in a position where a lot of teams in MLS are not. A lot of clubs do not have the training facility and the academy infrastructure that's set up like RSL does.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
You have to be able to just make moves on the margins to round things out. For a long time, and this was, primarily due to the, overstepping of Deloy Hansen during his time as owner, like RSL lost out on retaining a lot of talented players who came through that academy, attacking style players. Guys that went to Europe and played on really talented teams. RSL is going to always have to find a way to toe that line, to be the team that also wants to go out and spend money to compete, but at the same time prioritize its ethos, which is develop from within. They just have to find the right people in place to help the front office go out and continue to scour the world to find good players. This team, this league, if you get 2 or 3 players, if you hit on 2 or 3 players, and not just from a talent standpoint, look at guys like Damir Kreilach, look at guys like Rafa Cabral. If you can get 2 of those in addition to what this team already has, you're made in the shade.
Yeah,
but
I agree.
It's easier said than done.
Last thing, we'll end on this because, it isn't just about spend. It's about spending money correctly. And shout out to our guy, Garth Lagerway. I hate to bring up Atlanta because Garth is going through some stuff, and we love you, Garth. They spent a ton of money in the offseason, and they're second to last in the table in the East. Fired their coach. So it's not just about writing checks. It's about writing checks correctly. And you've always been good to kind of help me understand, like the modern day of MLS, it's hard to bring up 2009 as a model because now teams are bringing in killers, whether it's Messi, my guy Sonny,
yep.
And so I don't know that RSL is going to make a splash like that. But is there a danger, and this is where I need the CK international soccer knowledge, like when it comes to the EPL, when it comes to the Premiership, it feels like teams like Everton or Newcastle or Fulham are just in purgatory all the time. They're not necessarily relegated, but they're always like 10th, 11th, and maybe occasionally they rise up here or there. Is there a danger RSL is falling into a club that in MLS is just like a mid-table club that occasionally will maybe make the postseason and maybe win a couple of games, or can they find their way out of that cul-de-sac?
They can. I'll just point you to the results on the Eastern Conference side. The number 1 team in the league this year was the Philadelphia Union, who spend jack. I think they spend less than RSL.
Less than RSL.
You know what they're really good at? Finding players across the world, developing players, employing them the right way. Second below them was Cincinnati, an expansion team a few years ago, who has come in and spent a bleep ton of money. I think they spent like $30 million on 2 players last year. And guess what? They're in the mix. So there are 2 ways of doing it. RSL, I think, has to find a way of straddling both of those realities. They have to be willing to continue to, manifest that ethos of we're going to find players and bring them along and nurture them and have them be part of our academy and then raise them to the first team. But you have to be willing to go out and find some killers as well. And if you can develop those types of players, then you're just you've hit the lottery.
Yeah.
And Diego Luna is not at that level yet, but he is kind of the example of what is the most ideal type of recruitment, retaining, and seeing the fruits of your labor pay off. Like I've said, if RSL is going to get back to a top 3 or 4 team in the Western Conference, I think you need at least 2 attacking players who are better than Diego Luna on a week-to-week basis, which is saying a lot. Diego Luna is going to go to the World Cup.
Yeah.
But I do think you have to have that.
Yeah, I mean, again, looking around the league, some of these teams are bringing in. It's a different level of soccer now. When's the last time you fired up the sticks?
Oh, man, So we've talked about how I think both of our Xboxes are now antiquated.
Dated, correct, yes.
Which is very depressing for me.
It is very sad.
I haven't My son will power it on because he likes to mess with the lights, but my guess is the software update is so backed up that it would probably take a week to update. So it's been a year, maybe more. Yeah. I'm sad about it.
Well, and you're also married. When you're single, you can't just be like crushing games. You can't be like on Xbox for hours.
I mean, I know plenty of people who do, but they don't necessarily live a great lifestyle.
I have a feeling on my dating profile, if I said avid gamer, I'm not sure that the dating pool would be huge.
I'll leave. No comment.
Good to see you, Chris.
Thanks, buddy.
Chris Comrade from The Athletic. We're going to bring in Tony Parks live in studio. How's your libido, guys? Huh? Let's dig into it for a second. Is it low? Well, good news. Can help you get that thing up. And also just simply energy level. Here's the deal. Game Day Men's Health has been a game changer for me. As you age, if you have been trying to get in shape as somebody who's in their 30s, 40s, 50s, you know that it's a different ball game than it was when you were a teenager or in your 20s. When you could eat whatever you wanted to, you hit the gym for a few weeks and boom, you're back. It's a lot different. So a couple of years ago, I made a goal. I said, I want to get to a certain weight. I want my body fat percentage to be at a certain spot, and I want to get in the best shape I've been in as an adult. Well, I started working out, started eating clean. I changed a bunch of habits. I was very consistent. And after about 3 or 4 months, I was frustrated with what I perceived to be lack of results based off of how much work I was putting in. So I had a friend recommend Game Day Men's Health and asked me if I had ever supplemented testosterone, which I had never had before. So got a hold of Game Day Men's Health, did a consultation, which for you is free because you're a listener to this radio show. The consultation is blood work. They take a little bit of blood, you hang out for a minute, then they go over all of your levels. Then they have recommendations about what can help based off of what your blood work says. For me, supplementing testosterone and utilizing some of their peptides has been a game changer. So when I started to biohack, as the bros like to say these days, and you got to exercise. There's no such thing as a shortcut when you're trying to get back into shape. Eating well will be a game changer. But the biohacking and utilizing some of their, their products helped me get into the best shape I've ever been in as an adult within about 3 or 4 months after I started seeing them. That's been my experience. So don't take my word for it. Go check it out. If you've been wanting to get back into shape, utilize a couple of the cold months to make sure when springtime comes, you're not the dad of the pool that is afraid to take his shirt off. I can promise you it works. Okay, so the consultation is free. It's on the house. But here's the kicker. And they don't do this. They're doing it as a result of them being a client on the show. If you mention you heard me talking about it, they're giving you 50% off of your first-year membership. So the consultation's free, and then you get half off your first-year membership. Some of these products, once upon a time, were only for elite athletes or very rich people. Game Day Men's Health has made it accessible and affordable, and then they track your progress. This is not a car wash thing where you go in and you're done. They track your progress. So go to GameDayMen'sHealth.com right now. That's GameDayMen'sHealth.com. Schedule your consultation. Tell them you heard me talking about it, and that is 50% off your first-year membership. Lehigh, Pleasant Grove, Cottonwood Heights, that's where I go, in South Ogden. Find the closest one near you and tell them I sent you for a free testosterone test and consultation. GameDayMen'sHealth.com. 2 hours down, 2 hours to go. Tony Parks live in studio coming up on the other side of a Wednesday edition of The Drive right here on ESPN 700. All right, 4 o'clock hour of the program on this Wednesday afternoon gets going right now. For the next hour, we will be entertained, informed, and a bunch of other superlatives by the great Tony Parks on a Wednesday afternoon. Voice of the Bees, legend in the market. Hello, Tony. How are you, young man?
I'm great, man. I'm great. College basketball season just started. I had that game this past Monday with Coach Elaine Elliott. Her broadcast debut, that was great. And then was up north with the opener with Weber State men's. And then I'll have some more Big 12, Big Sky, Mountain West, all of that and more coming up. I love it. College hoops get started. And what a great handoff after what was a legendary World Series. Second best World Series I've ever seen. 91 with the Twins and Braves was the very best I'd ever watched. Game 7, quite possibly the greatest baseball game I've ever watched. So that was cool. Like, it's been an awesome fall, man. You know, the Jazz look good. They addressed a number of things. They're not a finished product, but I think Jazz fans should be pleased about that. Mammoth with the hot stretch there. Like, there's a lot of cool stuff happening. BYU's undefeated. Utah's looking great. Found themselves in a nice spot. So I love this time of year. Fall's the best, man. Just I've thoroughly enjoyed doing some work during the day, being with a toddler all day, and then the sports drama and the conversation and everything has been magnificent.
Did you have a rooting interest in the World Series at all?
I was going for the Blue Jays.
So was I.
My wife's a huge Giants fan, and let me tell you, she was very much into that World Series. I wanted the Blue Jays, but wasn't hurt by the Dodgers winning. My wife was not happy about the Dodgers.
As the baseball expert in the room, and once upon a time I watched a lot more baseball than I do now and covered it in a way that, you know, if this Miller project is able to manifest a team, we will lean into it and cover it better than anybody else here. I can promise you that. But you know the deal. When you have a job like this, you watch the stuff that you need to cover. Can you put into context what Shohei Ohtani is doing and who he is, historically speaking? I mean, I said this to Porter. I said, dude, I don't think we talk enough about – I think at one point what I read was over 2 weeks in L.A., he did not make an out. He was 7 of 7 with 6 walks and 13 plate appearances, and 5 of those hits were home runs. And then after that 18-inning marathon, he pitched like 17 hours later.
Yeah.
I don't know that I can really wrap my mind around who Shohei Ohtani is.
He got on base 9 times in that Game 3. He had what I witnessed as the best in my lifetime, the best single postseason performance I've ever seen in a game, where he went 3 for 3 with 3 home runs, got on base 4 times, and then just went out and pitched, 6 innings of 2 hits shutty with 10 Ks. What are we doing?
Yeah.
In the words of the great Tim Kirkchin.
Yeah.
I mean, who does that? This is amazing. Shohei Ohtani is quite possibly the greatest player to ever play. He's right there in front of us all the time. I had a whole postseason to watch him, and I just marveled at how great he was. And by the way, he's human. He's not perfect. But when he is at his very best, it's insane to watch just how good he is. And I think it's magical to watch him. I mean, we had the honor of growing up watching, Michael Jordan and some really great athletes in different sports. Walter Payton. We could go through the names. The cool thing is, or Jerry Rice. The cool thing is you knew you were watching greatness. You knew you were watching. This is the greatest wide receiver ever, and you knew you were watching it.
Yeah.
And now it's like Shohei Ohtani, you look up at a highlight thing, and he hits 2 home runs, and you just go back to what you're doing. It's like I think in some ways we've gotten too numb to just how great this dude is.
Well, there are a lot of studies that like what's the hardest thing to do in sports? Is it to hit a golf ball straight consistently? Is it, a lot of them will tell you that hitting a baseball is the hardest thing to do in all of sports. And I don't know that I've ever watched I can remember like when, as much as it pains me, when the Red Sox started their run, coming back from 3-0 and beating the Yanks, during their postseason runs, like Manny Ramirez for a while felt like automatic to me. And maybe it's because I was a Yankee fan. But I remember every time Manny was up, and then Ortiz was raking at that point as well. But I don't know that I've ever watched a baseball player where when he doesn't get a hit, you're like, dude, what's wrong with you? And watching Shohei Ohtani, when Shohei Ohtani either strikes out or like hits a pop fly, it's the same way I feel like when a basketball player misses a wide open layup.
Yeah.
It's a really weird feeling.
It is weird, too, because in the Dodgers championship runs, and this last one, by the way, they should have won it. They spent the most. They had the
They're
most
the best
talent,
team in
all that.
baseball.
Right.
I believe that, yeah.
But it was a magical run. The way it was storybook. And I don't care if you like the Dodgers or not like them. That was storybook. From Rojas tying it up in the ninth to Freeman walking it off in Game 3 to Kike Hernandez with the double play and left in Game 6. Just each player making a key play in a key moment. It was kind of cool in that way for them. But what I would say is, to your point, what's strange about him, in some of the biggest moments, it's not like he's just falling on his face. He flies out or he doesn't get the big hit, and somebody else actually, like a Rojas, somebody else actually has come through in some of those really big moments. But you're right. You feel like in the NBA Finals when the Jazz played the Bulls in 98, that's one of the most misremembered NBA Finals because it's remembered as, Jordan was just better. No, the Jazz fell on their face for the first 5 games. Their best performance was Game 6. It just happened to be a Jordan game. And in every series, you had to budget one Jordan game where it didn't matter what you did. That dude got to decide who wins. And Shohei Ohtani had a Shohei game in each series of that postseason. I think he's among the greatest players in any sport ever. And by the time he's done, we could look back and be like, that was the greatest player in the history of all major sports. We'll see what happens. Like, there's still more room to go, but he is going to be in that conversation. He's that good.
Yeah, it would be like if Patrick Mahomes was also a lockdown corner, like getting picks every game. There, in basketball, you have to play both sides, right?
Right.
In football, Travis Hunter, there are a few that try it. But in baseball, maybe back in the day, there were some that would pitch and hit, but nobody does it now.
No.
And nobody does it on a level like this. It's funny you referenced the Jordan stuff. It was a real lesson for me because when you're in the middle of it, it's hard to recognize it for what it is. It's usually after the fact where you're like, oh, yeah, that was awesome. And Jazz fans understand this because if we're honest, we haven't had a team that has been a championship contender since 1998. We just haven't. The Booz D. Will teams were good, get to a conference final. That year was a little fluky. If you remember, the Mavs were the number 1 seed. Don Nelson was coaching the Warriors. He's like, I know Dirk better than Dirk knows Dirk. So they shut him down. That was the Baron Davis dunk on Karolinko year, but the Jazz were able to beat Golden State the second round, or the Golden State, and then they beat Houston, I think, and then they go to the conference finals. I never believed that team was close to winning a championship. They didn't have the size to compete with. It was Gasol and Bynum from the Lakers, and even at the Mitchell Gobert peak, as special as they were at times, their playoff failures indicated that they were not close to a championship team. But no part of me thought during the 90s we were watching the Jazz best chance to win a championship for the next 25, 30 years. It's hard to recognize it when you're in front of it. And looking back on how many opportunities I had to watch Michael Jordan in person rip our hearts out as a Knicks fan or a Jazz fan. Oh, yeah. And certainly, I'll never forget the moment he hit the shot in 98. I was sitting next to Stuart Scott, who celebrated in a way media members are not supposed to celebrate because he was a Carolina guy.
Right. I forgot about that.
But it really taught me a lesson. Like, no, acknowledge what's in front of you. Like when LeBron was at his peak, don't miss a LeBron game. Don't take it for granted. And this Ohtani thing right now is just an opportunity for people to witness greatness in person as opposed to being retrospective to say, oh, yeah, that was awesome. Recognize it when it's in front of you.
Yeah, you have to appreciate it. Tom Brady was that way. I don't think we'll ever see a quarterback again. I mean, I know Mahomes could go in this category where a guy just rolls out of bed and goes to the AFC title game. Brady has been to more Super Bowls than any team in NFL history. Mm-hmm. What are we talking about? Yeah, like what? Yeah, and in a league that is not allowing that. Yeah, from LeBron James to all of it. And if you want to tell multiple truths, like if you feel like, you want to criticize LeBron in some other ways, I think that's fair. That's fine. You could do that. And with where it's fun is in the moment, I could really feel that. Michael Jordan's, game 2 against Portland, or maybe it was game 1. I think it was game 1 where he had six threes and did the shrug. And I remember in that moment just being like, this is so cool. Mm-hmm. Like, this guy is so good.
Yeah.
and it made it really special. I do think that there's something in the sports world where we somehow have a hard time being able to, like, if somebody is at their absolute best, like, well, we want to see somebody knock them off. That's fine if you want to root against them. But then they turn it into, oh, I want to tell everybody he's a bad teammate. Oh, no, he's arrogant, he's a jerk, he's this and that. It happened with Kobe Bryant. It's like, well, what? Now hold on. Now why are we turning it into he's a bad teammate, he doesn't deserve it, he this, he that? If you don't want to root for him, that's fine. But then it turns to this personal level where I've never thought that's actually healthy for sports fandom. I used to really piss off a lot of people because I was in the Laker locker room during their 3 years they went to the finals in a row and they won it twice, and they were always right up there.
Yeah.
And I remember everybody was just obviously madly in love with Darren Williams. And people would tell me, like, Kobe's a jerk, isn't he? He's a punk, isn't he? He's a petulant little, blah, blah, blah. And I go, no, he's not. He's awesome. He's amazing. Never seen a guy split personal ego and performance ego. No, but you can just see it, like the way he does this. And I was like, yeah, that's performance ego. The way he treats his teammates, unbelievable. Lamar Odom is lost without him. Ron Artest is like nowhere to be found without him. I mean, he's got Vladimir Radmanovic, Sasha Vujacic. Like, these guys are actually playing on an NBA floor because of him. And never had a point guard that I thought was top shelf level ever. But wow, the way they elevated. Andrew Bynum wasn't really in love with that game. But boy, he could get him to defend and rebound and be a havoc on the O boards. And a lot of local fans here had a really tough time with that, Spence. They didn't want to believe it. Then they'd flip it over to D. Will. Be like, is he not just the coolest guy? No. They would be like, well, no, you're supposed to say that because other people are saying that. It's like, I know. But that was a guy, and by the way, I don't have any negative feelings to Darren Williams. I always thought he couldn't separate personal ego and performance ego. He had performance ego. It was great. But I always felt like, there was another level of him that I never felt like a ton of players had the emotional trust in him that I watched them have with Kobe. Kobe was a better player, obviously, but Kobe had influence. Darren had some, but nowhere near as much as that elite level. So the point is, everybody wanted to craft the narrative that Kobe must be an awful, horrible human being, bad teammate, arrogant, jerk, every expletive that you can't say on radio. And I would just have to shake my head and say, no, I've seen too much behind the scenes. It tells me I can see why guys want to win with him and for him.
I wonder why we do the thing where we love you until we don't. To your point, where it's like you want to see it feels very American to me, where we want to celebrate our stars, we want to celebrate our celebrities, and then we love to watch them crash and burn. And I don't know if it's jealousy, I don't know if it's just small-mindedness. The interesting, because you referenced LeBron, and there are certain things about LeBron's drama. There's certain things about LeBron's personal hypocrisy and his leadership style and his passive aggressiveness that I find incredibly irritating. But strictly from a player standpoint and living up to expectations, he might be in an area all by himself. I was just looking at this, because you referenced the teams that Kobe carried to the finals and championships. And Mike did this too with Bill Wennington and Will Perdue.
Bobby Hansen.
Judd
Bushler.
And, of course, it changed when Scotty was there, when Pippen was there. Horace Grant was a very good player. But when you looked at the roster, without Mike, they're winning 15 games or so. And the 2007 Cavs team that LeBron took to the finals, Zydrunas Ilgauskas may have been their second-best player. Or Larry Hughes or Drew Gooden. Like that roster, Delonte West.
J.J. Hickson, I think.
That roster was so bad. And, they lost. But just to get that team to the final. Like LeBron has the 3-1 comeback against the Warriors might be, when I watched him do that, that was the first time I would entertain the whole, like, is he on Mike's level?
Yeah.
I will never believe that he is, and Mike is always one for me. But up until that 3-1 comeback, when he willed them back the way he did, that was the first time I was like, all right, this dude is in that cul-de-sac. He lives in that space.
Well, didn't he do Magic Johnson's 42, 15, and 7 like 3 times in a row to get that done? Like,
wild.
Guys, like that's, whoa. Yeah. Individually, I don't know if I've ever been more impressed at the NBA. Individually.
Yeah.
To watch just one sequence of an individual carry to win a championship like that. No, I think there's a reluctance that people have to be happy for other people. I think it's a great sign of maturity when you can be happy for others. I think that really shows something when you're genuinely that way. The late Steve Klauke was genuinely that way. That's why I think I always admired him, looked up to him, had a great connection with him in this market. And you have always been that person.
It's nice of you to say.
Not just because I'm on the show. I think you and I connected very well because you, one of the first times we ever talked, you were able to point out some positive things about the way I was as a host or play-by-play, and I could tell you meant it, right? There is something strange with this. Caitlin Clark comes into the WNBA, and, man, it is just bash down central, constant negativity. My goodness. And it feels like, there's a time where somebody could shoot 98% from the field, and it's like, but with 10 seconds left, they missed that shot. And if they make it, they win the whole thing. And it's like, and they wouldn't have gone to the 7-Eleven without this player. What are we doing?
Yeah.
And it'll happen in the NFL. Brady threw for a record 505 yards. His team punted one time, and they scored more points than any losing team in the history of the Super Bowl. And the Eagles won, and everybody was just hammering Tom Brady. And I'm going, this is ridiculous. We've gone so far that I think it's projection. I think jealousy's in vogue, and I think the Kelsey and Swift dating and all of that. Man, nobody could be happy for them. Nobody could be positive in any way about it.
Yeah,
I'm like, she's dating not the quarterback, the tight end.
Right.
From a small market, by the way.
Yeah.
And she is as big of a global icon as you're going to find, guys. But everyone had to have their own little take on how it couldn't possibly be good or real or it's negative for the youth so there's crafted narratives based on lies because people just have this reluctance to be happy for other people. And I think Kalani's example and the things he said in that post game and oftentimes what his message is to his program, and I think there's some good examples out there that I think are really, really helpful for a lot of young people, but also grown adults like yourself and myself to be able to reset and refocus on what's most important.
Yeah, like the way some Ute fans turned on Cameron Rising.
My gosh.
Dude, do you not remember what this kid did? Like, can you do a Google search if you forgot and he's hurt? Like, lay off him. Or the way Jazz fans turned on Donovan, right? Like, Donovan walked on water here, dude. They were painting murals of him downtown. And, and this will always be tough for me. Like, I watch Donovan now, and I'm happy for him. But, like, so sad that we didn't get to watch him continue to evolve here. He was so special, so good, and such a good kid. He was raised to be a pro. He came here, and it was right after the Hayward stuff. So everybody was like, oh, okay, it's going to be okay. We've got him. He drops 40 on the Pelicans as a rookie early on. It's like, okay, here we go. And then he was really being celebrated off the floor for all the things that he had done and said and his participation in the community. COVID hits. George Floyd summer hits. Donovan leans into learning more about his history. He clearly didn't really know about certain things that he had learned. He starts expressing himself, and it felt like everybody here just turned on him. And then he clearly didn't want to be here. I mean, let's be clear about his role in, breaking that thing down brick by brick. But I don't know that I've seen a Jazz man, and maybe Darren a little bit because of the Jerry stuff. I mean, there are plenty of people that will never be a Darren person because of the Jerry stuff. But in the history of the Jazz, I don't know if I've ever seen a player go from walking on water to get out of here when it comes to a portion of our community.
Yeah, it was really eye-opening. Because when you say, that team, the Donovan and Rudy team, they never really threatened for championship. And you're right. They weren't quite there. They're light contender. Even as a 1 seed, you could see the flaw that they had, perimeter defense and things like that. They weren't as big in some positions as they needed to be. But you had 2 cornerstone pieces. You had a Hall of Fame coach, in my opinion, based on his acumen. I think Quinn Snyder's top 5 in the league. I mean, his acumen is tremendous.
Yep.
You had some great things, great role players who understood their concept and what they were doing. So you felt like, man, you can build on this. You can build on this. And to see them have to, and I do believe they had to move on from that group, that was crushing because you could see all of it coming together. You could see they were, one more piece or just, a couple things away there from going to being light contender to maybe even favorite. And you're like, man.
They were right there.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Oh, man. And it goes to show that trust was a problem for that group.
Yeah.
Trust and emotional trust and all those things. If you don't think emotion drives decision-making, that was one of the best examples ever.
Yeah.
Top 5 head coach, all-star point guard, and I know he only made one, but you had an all-star point guard, you had a sixth man, you had the best defensive player, you had an all-star, top 10 player in your league who could be an MVP candidate someday. We're talking, man, things really coming together, and it never could reach its max potential because of all the things away from the game. And that's something that I think this city, I think a lot of fans will never forget that.
They were right there. They were fun. You and I were on the broadcast during those years, and I'll always look back on those years with both fondness and what could have been.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I being in that locker room, actually feeling when it turned. Didn't know why it turned.
Yep.
But feeling when I still remember the night. It was against the Rockets. Something weird.
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't figure it out. You and I were talking. I'm like, I don't know what's
going
happened.
on here. Yeah.
And then all of a sudden they went from, because they went like 11th best through defensively through the first like 2 months trying to get used to each other. And then they went like 7th best for the next month and a half. And their offense was exceptional.
Yeah.
And then right before that COVID situation, they had, I think, a 2-month stretch it was where they were 29th defensively. And the only team worse than them was Jim Boylan's Bulls, which kind of doesn't count.
Love my guys.
Yeah, I love Jim a lot. I don't know. We're right there. I feel like we're getting closer. You just lost by 30 to Cal State
You're
Northridge.
not
I don't
getting
know.
closer.
No, but
we're all watching.
All jokes aside, I'm going, I don't know, man. So when that team couldn't get it back, you and I always said, before COVID, before this, without that, it was something deeper than that.
Yeah.
And it never went away.
One more Jazz thing. We'll catch a break because I want to do a big college football segment with you coming up. Tony Parks is live in studio. Let me start here so I don't sound like I'm being insensitive. I am gutted for Walker Kessler. It is really unfortunate that he's going to have shoulder surgery that will keep him out for the year. Walker's a really, really good young player. He appears to be one of the few players on this team that has been serious about competing since he landed here. And some of the I hate when I see players yucking it up after losses in pro basketball. It happens far too much. And we've seen that from some of these young players over the course of the first few years of this rebuild. We're now in year 4 of a rebuild. Walker is a piece that you found that is real. He is out for the year. So let me start with that. But not to sound cutthroat with the way this league works, this actually will come back to benefit the Jazz because they didn't give him the max rookie contract extension or whatever extension he was asking for. The Jazz elected to do with Walker what they did with Gordon, to say, go bet on yourself. He's a restricted free agent at the end of this year. So this injury, in a way, will benefit the Jazz because they don't have to allocate as much money to him as they probably were going to have to keep him. So then you have more money to spend next offseason. And even though the Jazz have looked better this year, they still have a top 8 protected pick that will go to Oklahoma City if they fall or if they rise and they're not one of the 8 worst teams in pro basketball. That is an asset you have to retain during a rebuild process in Salt Lake City. I don't care how good you look. So your thoughts on kind of all this stuff that's come down with Walker and what this means for the Jazz both now and moving forward?
I think everything you said was right on the money, and you hate to have to view it through that lens, but that's a practical point here that can't be ignored. If I'm a Jazz fan, I'm very happy about the fact that they're building towards something now. I think that this is a team playing with purpose, playing with accountability. I think that's been structured well. I thought the Jazz had a great offseason. I've been critical of their previous seasons, but this offseason, I think they've been honest about where the problems are and where the problems aren't. Will Hardy was not one of them. I love that they have on that staff 2 guys who are head coaches for their G League team that are right there, that understand. They've been head coaches. They know how to serve a head coach. So that relieves a lot of what Will Hardy needs to do with managing a staff. And I just like overall the beginning to this and what I'm watching. I think it's looked very different than what I've watched through a lot of the previous 3 years. And so the point that you make about the more money to spend in the offseason, what that could mean for the draft, that's all there. You just want Kessler to get back to where it's healthy, to where it's not bothering him, to where it doesn't, he's back to the player that he absolutely can be, so that when he hits the ground running, the Jazz are another step forward in that progress that they want towards being much better than they have been in the recent years.
Yeah, it's a bummer for Walker personally because he lost a lot of money. I mean,
Yeah,
if
right.
he had a good
No
year
doubt.
this year, he could have parlayed that into a contract offer that I'm sure the Jazz would have matched. But gutted for the kid. Walker Kessler out for the year for the Utah Jazz. All right, we'll do some college football coming up. Utah Utes 13th in the CFP rankings. BYU at 7, Texas Tech at 8. Tony's take on that coming up on the other side, but we welcome in Ryan from the Dish Bros. YouTube TV, how's that going for you? Well, if you're a sports fan, you need to have Dish. Even if that wasn't a thing, you should still have it. Save a bunch of money on internet solutions as well by dialing 801-424-DISH. What's up, Ryan?
Ton of money, and the offer right now is super clean and simple. Guys, $89 a month. You're going to get all the ESPNs, Fox. You're all set up. You can watch the games. You'll have your locals. That's the set price, and it includes the DVR fee and additional all the additional fees. Just like $4 or $5 in tax, because you're looking to save money and get a price guarantee where the price doesn't change. Call us up. We'll get you set up with the award-winning Hopper system. And remember, this is the biggest DVR on the market. It auto-hops commercials, auto-records the locals. It'll auto-record your games for you also. And also has all the streaming apps built into it. So they're like channels, so simple and easy to access both sides of the aisle as far as TV. Listen, call us up, take advantage of this offer. We'll throw in movie channels free for 3 months and have you installed for dinner at JCW's. If you're going without, this is your time. You got to call us now while our spots are filling up. We've been busy this week. Call 424-DISH, 801-424-DISH.
There's Ryan from the Dish Professionals. More with Tony Parks, some college football coming up on the other side on ESPN 700. Was it Jerry Maguire? Tom Cruise is singing this song driving down the freeway after he signed what's his name to a deal. Was it? I think it was Jerry Maguire when Tom Cruise, legend, but very awkward at times. I think this was the song Tom Cruise was singing in Jerry Maguire. Is this ringing a bell to you?
Yeah, it's been a long time since I've seen this movie.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to remember if that's.
I think
he was yelling. I love this song.
What's your karaoke go-to, Tony? If your life depended on it, you had to do karaoke.
Oh boy,
what are you choosing? Because a lot of people just don't want to do it. They're like, I'm not singing karaoke.
Maybe it'd be Carrie and Your Love with Me. Okay. George Strait.
Little George Strait.
Yep.
Porter's down with that.
I can't.
See, Porter.
I'm not a singer.
Great song.
Porter loves himself some
One of
George
the only
Strait.
songs I can sing without embarrassing myself is "Oh Canada."
you know the worst "Oh Canada."
Yeah, and
he has to sing it at the Bees games.
And so randomly had to sing it one time where they were like, as a matter of fact, the last Jazz home game that ever happened before COVID-19 and everything, they played the Raptors.
Okay.
And I walk into this room, and this woman's in there, and she goes, "How are you?" I go, "Hey." And I was like, "Oh, I'm curious what." She's like, "Oh, I'm doing the national anthem." I go, "Oh, cool." I go, "You get the bonus anthem." She goes, "I get the what?" I go, "You get the bonus national anthem." I was like, "You're doing the United States and Canada." And the look on her face was like, I didn't know that.
Oh, no.
And they didn't, yeah.
Oh, dear.
So she goes, "Oh, I'll just write it on my hand. It'll be fine." I was like, no.
Awkward.
No.
That's not going to go down. Goodness gracious. Tony Parks is with us live in studio. We talked a little Jazz hoops and went down memory lane last segment. All right, Tony, I've been talking about, and I know the listeners are sick of it, and BYU fans hate it, but after BYU beat Utah, I started digging into the criteria that the College Football Playoff Committee told us they were going to use this year. Now, the problem with this exercise is the College Football Playoff Committee has told us they were going to use certain pieces of criteria every year, and then you see the rankings, and you're kind of like, are you really using what you told us you were going to use? Are you really utilizing the formulas that you told us that you were using? Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's hard to understand their exercise, what they're trying to do, what's real, what's not. But I have to say, based off the first iteration of these rankings, they're actually using these advanced metrics to rank these football teams. And so even though BYU beat Utah, the next week, both Football Power Index and the S&P Plus didn't just have Utah ranked higher. It's a number of spots higher. And as we sit here today, FPI, Utah is at 7. BYU is at 14. Texas Tech is sitting there at 11. So I think it's safe to say, and this is how the college football season usually unfolds for me. You start the season, you're doing a bunch of research, you're trying to predict who's going to be good, who's going to be this or whatever. The season starts, and then the results start spilling in, and then teams kind of separate themselves, injuries happen, and then your opinion changes. So we're finally now to the place in the Big 12 Conference where it's very clear that it's Utah, BYU, Texas Tech as the three best teams in the conference, and I don't think anybody would argue that.
No, I don't think you can. I look at BYU and Texas Tech. What a great matchup that's going to be. I'm excited for that game. I don't see either team getting to 3 losses, right? But I do see Utah showing me so much more, and when they talk about using some of the advanced numbers and things like that, and then you watch them play, obviously, when they're at their optimal level, and they have been recently. I mean, if you go that Arizona State game, and we know the BYU game, I thought they actually did a great job physically throughout most of that football game, made the key miscues at the key times, and BYU wins by 3 in what I think is an even matchup. And then the last 2 games, I mean, this has been what a great performance, those last 2 games, to show that, okay, there's a ton of 2-loss teams out there, and that this football team, as you said earlier in the broadcast today, will flat out embarrass several other teams that are out there. I think they're a cut above. So I'm excited to see what that means for Utah as an at-large, because I think that's how it's going to happen. And Utah has been impressing in all these ways. The fact that they're committed to that is good, Spence. One thing I've always hated about the previous era of the CFP is they would use too many things that gave them wiggle room to actually corrupt the vote and then get very inconsistent on when they would use certain things. Like, you know what? You have to measure future injuries and impact. Oh, really? So that meant Ohio State had no chance to win with their third-string quarterback back in 2014.
Yep.
Well, they won the whole thing. Okay, but then Florida State in 2023, clearly with the loss of their starting quarterback, they couldn't possibly. So what happened is they got to then get cutesy and choose based on other things, and I never thought that was good. But to your point, now that they're going to put a focus on that, I think it's starting to show some really good things in good ways, and I think that's helpful if they can remain consistent with that, stay on point with that, and obviously I think it's there's no perfect way, but I think it starts to move towards a best way.
So FBI, as I referenced, Utah 7, Texas Tech 11, and then BYU 14, and then you move over to the S&P Plus, which they also look at. Utah, Texas Tech is 4, Utah 6, and Brigham Young is all the way down to 16. So, I wasn't sure what we were going to see last night. Utah in the AP and the coaches poll, that's 17. But when they started to release these rankings, and we've talked about this all week, and I said, I think there's a chance Utah, if the committee does what they tell us they're going to do, there's a chance Utah, who's at 17 in the AP and the coaches poll, will be valued higher by the CFP committee. And then you start to see the teams that were ranked. So 17 is Georgia Tech, 16 Vanderbilt. And I'm sitting there, okay, here we go. 15 Louisville, 14 Virginia, the highest ranked ACC team, by the way. And then Utah comes in at 13, and you say, wow, they really are using these predictive models, these power index models, as opposed to just mirroring the AP, which in years past, it feels like they've done that. BYU at 7, Texas Tech at 8, Utah at 13. So the other thing that they're telling us, and they did this with Texas, okay, so Texas opens the season with the loss at the shoe against Ohio State. That's not a punitive loss for them, according to the CFP. They're actually applauding the fact that Texas took that risk. And I love it because I want teams to schedule better non-con games. It's better for a consumer. It's better for the media member. So the Texas loss to the Texas loss to Ohio State, not punitive, according to the committee. And because the committee values BYU at 7 and Texas Tech at 8, those two losses aren't necessarily things that they're really hammering Utah for. Hence the 4-spot rise to 13 in the CFP ranking.
No, I love to see that happen. Your Texas example is a good one. Ohio State, in their 8 games, has held 6 opponents to a single-digit number. Whoo, man, they're good.
Yeah.
They're really, really good. And so, just to say, well, you played a tough team, we're going to reward that. It's like, well, no, how did you play against them, right? And they were 14-7. They were right there with them throughout most of the game.
Yeah.
And you can be mad at them for going for it on 4th or whatever, but they were right there. So the fact that they're going to, because Utah is one of those teams you have to watch to truly appreciate what makes them really, really good. If you just looked at their schedule and said, oh, wow, they got blasted by Tech. It's like, no, that was a runaway in the last 6 minutes. And then if you see them lose to BYU, you're like, oh, well, that's a good team too. And okay, I'm going to look at these scoreboards. No. This is why watching the games matter so much. As an AP voter, that was the benefit I had that most voters didn't. They covered a team. So they didn't watch a lot of games.
Right.
They watched the game they covered, and then they would sit there eating pretzels at halftime and see that the highlight packages and go, wow, JT Daniels and USC looks great. No, they gave up almost 400 yards rushing to UNLV, but you didn't see that because you had a game to cover. I'm not blaming them. I'm saying that's a disadvantage. So to now focus in on this, Spence, I think this could make or break the difference between Utah getting an at-large berth, which is realistically what's going to have to happen. They need an at-large. So to your point earlier today when you said you got to handle business and style points matter, Utah physically is a cut above the rest in a lot of cases in that conference. Right now, that Arizona State game, and I was on the mic for that game, they blistered Arizona State 42-10. Physically, it felt worse. It felt so much worse. They were hitting on all cylinders, smacking them around. You could feel their speed and their physicality was too much for them to even begin to deal with. Then you go forward, you look at some of these other games we've seen recently. If they now can take a breather and then hit another level, I don't doubt that they're one of the 12 best teams in college football.
Yeah, and there are scenarios at play where if BYU loses to Texas Tech and Cincinnati, and Utah wins out based off of the second level of tiebreaker scenarios. Now, number one is simply head-to-head. That's number one. It's head-to-head. But based off the second level of tie-breaking scenarios in the Big 12, there's a chance Utah still does qualify for the Big 12 championship game because the cleanest, best way to do this is to, of course, win your conference. But the second path, which would be an at-large bid, is very much still on the table because they're at 13 instead of 17. So tiebreaker scenario A is head-to-head competition among the two tied teams. Tiebreaker scenario B is winning percentage against all common conference opponents among the tied teams. Hence that Cincinnati game for BYU looming large because Utah's already beaten Cincinnati. Now, the other scenario that could be in play, which would be completely wild, BYU is a 10-point underdog coming up Saturday down in Lubbock. It's going to be a tough game for them. But BYU's been an underdog several times this year, and they've been able to simply find ways to win even when they were down. If Brigham Young goes down to Texas Tech and smokes Tech somehow, some way, and then Tech finds their way back into the Big 12 championship against BYU, if BYU beats them again, okay, that would be Tech's third loss of the season. Now, it would be in a conference championship game, but what do you do with a 10-2 Utah if they can handle their business and a Tech team that only had 2 conference losses but also lost in the conference championship game? In that scenario, does Utah and BYU qualify for the CFP? I mean, that's what makes this wild.
Yeah, it's what makes it wild, too, because you're like, well, they lost a game that they qualified for, and Utah didn't play in it because they didn't qualify. This is what the old CFP used to have a really difficult time with, too, and I would always shake my head at it. What I would say is their quality of play is what that starts to come down to, and those advanced numbers, I think, start to then become very helpful. Head-to-head means something. Head-to-head does not mean everything when it comes to rankings. So when I was voting, people would be like, did you not know that LSU beat that team? Did you not watch the game? It's like they beat them by 1 point, and then they lost 49-3 to this team.
Right.
So there's different weight that comes with different stuff. So back to your point, one of the precursors that you're talking about, it would have to be a blowout type situation. It would have to be one where they don't look anywhere near like the team they were, right? So if they take 2 black eye losses and get smacked around and they end up a 3-loss team that lost in the championship game and Utah is surging and we're talking, just boat racing everybody out there, it becomes a much closer discussion than just simply head-to-head. And that, to your point, that's where these discussions become unique. That's where at-larges become very interesting. And if they stay to what they say they want to stay to, I'm curious to see how consistent they'll be with that and if they start to become swayed by other stuff. Because in years past, I've seen, and I know it's a different era, the CFP would be like, we are prioritizing X. And it's like, yep, they're doing it. Then it comes time to announce the playoff teams, and it's like, well, what just happened? Mm-hmm. So you prioritized X until it was, that game's going to be in New Orleans, and they're closer, and they're going to draw more eyeballs, and this is a private religious institution, so they're out, and the big brand name is in.
Yep.
Let's not be dumb.
The persecution complex will be at an all-time high if BYU. So let's play another game here.
Okay.
So if BYU loses to Tech coming up on Saturday, and then they lose one more conference game, and I don't know that I see that, but they do have to travel to Cincinnati, and they get TCU at home, a TCU team that at times this year has looked like, I guess I'll say, one of the top half teams in the conference. I don't think they've looked like one of the better teams in the conference, but a TCU team who at times, they beat SMU, who just beat, Miami. They hung 42 on Baylor. Their last game was a pretty underwhelming win against a bad West Virginia team. So I don't think I see BYU losing to TCU. But if BYU loses to Tech, and if they lose on the road to Cincinnati, and then here's the other complicated thing, you have to cheer for Cincinnati to lose as well, because another portion of the tiebreaker comes down to the higher opponent winning percentage that you played in conference. And Utah's schedule has been harder than BYU's. So if Utah and BYU and Cincinnati all end up with 2 losses and Tech only has 1 because they beat BYU, Utah would actually get in that scenario because they played a harder conference schedule, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
A lot of this stuff, I mean,
yeah.
you sound like you're schizophrenic when you really kind of dig into it and try to explain it. The point is there's still a very realistic chance Utah will be able to either get into the Big 12 championship game and go into the CFP via that route.
Right.
Or because they're at 13, if they stomp the final 3 opponents and get a little help elsewhere, the committee is saying that they would look at Utah as an at-large, which up until yesterday I didn't think was possible.
Yeah, the way they'd been playing lately, I mean, I was watching that game Saturday.
It wasn't even fair.
And it was tough, too, because I've got maybe the greatest baseball game ever played going on.
Yeah, there was a lot going on.
So
that night,
went back and watched it, and I'm going, no, this team looks like a playoff team right now. They look like one of the 12 best. Would I make them the favorite to run through and be in the picture for the Natty? No, but they look like a playoff team. Like they've now responded very well to the BYU game. The BYU game, they made the key mistakes and key moments that cost them that game, but now they're not even leaving those up to doubt. I mean, they are just cleaning everyone's clock. You didn't do.
Right.
So anyway, different story there. But it becomes fun because right now in this market, Utah is thriving, playing their best brand of football now, going into November. BYU, I've had to argue with people a lot, and I want to get your take on this. People have been like, well, they're vulnerable. You know, they're just getting away with stuff. And I'm like, no, I think they're a team that is not perfect by any means. And they really bond together. And as the game goes on, they get better. And they have something special about them. They really do. I don't think they're a team that's like last year when Oklahoma State blew it against them. And I was like, no, that's not magic. That's the other team screwing it up.
Right.
But this team here, it's like, no, they're finding ways to make big plays. They're making great adjustments. They have great coaching. They're getting the most out of what they are. I think there's something magical about them that's fun to follow, fun to watch, and obviously if you're a fan, it's fun to cheer for.
Well, we don't do a very good job in our country of holding two thoughts in our head at the same time, okay? So
Saying we're that divided?
I always like to say that, guess what, kids? Two things can be true, and it's okay. It can be true that BYU is good. It can also be true that BYU somehow, some way has had tremendous fortune over the past 2 years. The Iowa State game, as an example, the muffed punt off the kid's foot. I'm like, you have got to be kidding me. And then I love the spin from BYU media. It's like, no, they coach the players to push the other players into the ball. It's like, shut up, dude. You got lucky, and that's okay.
It's okay.
Because the other thing they did is they capitalized on opportunities, which is part of winning football games. Rocco Becht missed 3 players wide open in the end zone, and then he actually hit a kid in the end zone, and it went right off his hands. And I'm just watching like, you know what? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe all these years God has been a football fan and he's on their side, because it's okay to say that they are good and they're extremely fortunate at times. But here's the bottom line. They've won all of their games. But when you look at these advanced metrics we were talking about, Football Power Index that has BYU at 16 is clearly punishing them for a close win against a bad Colorado team, a close win against a bad Arizona team. And even, look, Ames is a hard place to play. I'm not taking that off the table. Iowa State's 2-4 in conference, 5-4 overall. So the difference is when Utah has played bad teams, they have curb stomped them. When BYU's played bad teams, they beat them in the similar way. They beat the only good team they've played so far, and that is Utah, right? Like, they barely get by Utah, but they barely get by Colorado. They barely get by Arizona. The bottom line is, in sports, we have a scoreboard. The scoreboard has been on BYU's side. But on Saturday against Tech, this is their chance to give the proverbial, well, they wouldn't give middle fingers because that's not allowed. This is their chance to really tell everybody once and for all, shut up. We're good. If they go to Lubbock and they beat Tech, BYU simply will have no more questions to answer.
Kind of funny you say that. I've always reminded people on this. The 08 Utes, and no, I'm not saying they're the 08 Utes, but the 08 Utes are always remembered for the BYU win, the Bama win, obviously, the TCU win. You know, they beat top 25, this, that, the other, on and on and on. And my favorite is when they bring up the Michigan win. I'm like, that was the worst Michigan team ever, like of all time. Literally, I'm not like being grandiose about that. That was a 3-win team, and you held on by a stop on a 2-point conversion. That Utah team in 08, there were 2 different versions. There was the first 9 games, and there was the last 4 games. People remember the last 4. They forget hanging on to beat New Mexico.
13-10.
They forget almost blowing it against Air Force. Brian Johnson almost lost them the game.
30-23.
And then drove them down to win 30-23. They had this very lukewarm win over Weber State, where they just weren't great. They were all right. They're fine. It's like 37-20 maybe. something like that.
37-21.
Okay, yeah. And I remember throughout that whole entire thing thinking, you know what? They should beat this team. They did. Okay, you know what? You're 5-0. You're 6-0. But I kept thinking, man, they need another level, and they found it. Utah has found, this version of Utah, found another level here. BYU, undefeated, and I think the point you and I are getting to is if they want this to be a magical special season, they're going to need to find another level.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to always win the way you did at Colorado, where you played very poorly and then turned it on. And so there have been some breaks, and they've created their own breaks, and they're really good.
Yeah.
But if they want this November to be one to remember, they need another level. I think they're capable of it. I think they have the coaches. I think they have the leadership. Now it's about going out and performing, and clearly this Saturday is going to tell us a lot.
Yeah, this Bear Bachmeyer kid's a gamer.
I love him.
They've got
I
good
love him.
Chase is a baller on the outside.
Yep.
When Glasgow and Kelly are healthy, that might be the best line. I'm not saying they're not good. But if you're a BYU fan, and if you've watched for the past couple of years, all I'm saying is your faith has been completely verified because of all of the crazy things that have seemed to happen. Like, you are giving your 10% happily because of what's happened over the past couple of years. Last thing here, I'll tell you, Brian Santiago, we interviewed him during Big 12 Media Day.
Yeah.
And I completely appreciated his candor where he said, look, we cannot rely on being one of the luckiest teams in college football like we were last year. And then I saw him this week at a symposium with Mark Harlan, and I went up to him and I said, hey, you know, what do you think about the interview you gave now? He's like, well, the luck continues. Like, even those guys down there are looking around. And here's the thing. They're 19-2 in their last 21. That's not a fluke. You have to give Kalani a ton of credit.
No, it's a mixture of a number of things. They've caught some breaks here and there. They've capitalized on those, and they've always put themselves in a position to be successful.
Right.
I think they have a great triumvirate there of coaches, from Kalani Sitake, with obviously the time that he spent. It's now a decade with him as head coach. Aaron Roderick is a bright football mind, obviously, ton of experience. He's very I think committed, devoted to wanting to do what it takes to win at the highest level there. And Jay Hill, I think, is one of the best coaches in college football.
Yeah.
He's a head coach type guy. He knows what it takes to game plan. He focuses so much on the little details so often that make the difference. So when you come down to games that are decided by an inch, what they do is every time you shuffle the deck, you feel like you have a better chance of having the hand that you need that puts you in position to win. And that's why they're winning.
And they all believe, man. Those kids believe in that coaching staff. TP, always a pleasure. All right?
Love it, man. Thanks for having me.
Tony Parks, before we catch a break, final hour of the show on a Wednesday, we welcome in Ryan from the Dish Pros. Call now if you have YouTube TV, if you like to, watch football. 801-424-DISH. What's going on, Ryan? You should still call if you have YouTube TV. 801-424-DISH. We'll catch a break. More next on ESPN. Yeah. Oh, hello, Ryan. How are you? Yeah, great.
I'm here.
Okay, what do you got?
This YouTube TV debacle, it's a real deal, and it's getting uglier and uglier. And listen, you don't want to go without. And Dish has literally rolled out the red carpet for you. The biggest, fastest DVR out there. They've got an awesome promotion where the price is set, locked in, $89 a month. That will get you all the channels you need to watch the football games. And here's the best part. The price won't go up. I can tell you right now, it's on the books. YouTube TV is going to do a pretty substantial rate increase in the next month or two. You can pay more or you can pay less, have a price guarantee, have a better DVR. Guys, we've got some neat packages too where he doesn't charge you for additional rooms. Now, that's kind of a sticky thing because that's something that we ran into with YouTube. You're like, if I wanted to have additional rooms, does it cost me more? Well, Dish has got that set up also now. It's this offer is clean and simple. We'll throw in movie channels, Paramount Plus, have you installed, and dinner at JCW's. Guys, $89 a month. If you're a cable or DirecTV customer, you better be picking up the phone right now because you're paying probably double in most cases. So 424-DISH. It's 801-424-3474.
Ryan from the Dish Pros, final hour on a Wednesday is next on ESPN 700. All right, here we go. Drive at 5 time, Wednesday afternoon style, 10 minutes past the hour of 5 o'clock on what's been a pretty warm yet cloudy day here in downtown Salt Lake City, Utah, right outside of our Broadway Media Studios. It's good to have you along for the ride. Spence Checketts behind the mic. That is Porter Larson behind the glass. Your commute home on a Wednesday afternoon gets going right now. Halfway through that work week and one day closer to the weekend. One day closer to football, Week 10 in the NFL. We'll get going tomorrow night with the Raiders and the Broncos in Denver. The Jazz are in action tonight in Detroit, seeing an old friend, Dennis Lindsey, helping rebuild the Detroit Pistons, who are a very good young team at 5-2. The Jazz are 3-4. They're 1-3 on the road. Some rough news for the Utah Jazz today as Walker Kessler will have shoulder surgery, and he is out for the year. So bummed for Walker. In a roundabout way, this actually could benefit the Jazz, but step number one is Walker getting that surgery and coming back healthy. And, of course, we'll be hoping for a full recovery for Walker Kessler. Right after we said goodnight last night, the College Football Playoff Committee released their first rankings of the season. And it is a good day to be a Ute, good day to be a Cougar, and good day to be a fan of the Big 12. The College Football Committee said the quiet part out loud, which is they actually value the Big 12, namely the top three teams in the conference, BYU, Texas Tech, and Utah. BYU comes in at 7. Texas Tech rolls in at number 8, and the Utah Utes were among the largest risers juxtaposed to the AP poll, where Utah's at 17. They come in at number 13. Now, number of different scenarios at play, as we've been talking about. The tiebreakers in the Big 12 are interesting to dig into, and there's a very realistic route for Utah to gain access and entrance to the Big 12 championship game. And as a result of being ranked at 13 in the first iteration of the CFP rankings, there's actually a very legitimate route of Utah making it into the CFP as an at-large team. Tiebreaker number 1 is head-to-head competition among the two tied teams. Tiebreaker number 2 is win percentage against all common conference opponents among the tied teams. Now, if there are two teams that are tied, head-to-head does come into play. But if you have 3 teams tied at 2 losses, you move over to win percentage in conference play. And that's where it's good news for Utah, who has played a better conference schedule this year than BYU and Cincinnati. So you have to hope Cincinnati loses another game, and you have to pray somehow, some way BYU loses too. The other route that could get you in is BYU beating Texas Tech and Texas Tech getting got again. That would put Texas Tech at 2 losses. If Utah can handle their business and Texas Tech is at 2 losses and Cincinnati is at 2 losses, along with Utah, BYU goes into the Big 12 championship game, and Utah would gain entrance because they have played a harder conference schedule than Texas Tech or Cincinnati. Houston, at 2 losses as well, is in the same bucket. There's a very realistic chance that Utah can make the Big 12 championship game, but of course, they have to win out, and they have to get some help from the teams that are in front of them. BYU continues to be a 10-point underdog coming up in Lubbock this weekend. It is a 10 a.m. kick, and it is a massive game after the CFP said last night they believe that BYU and Texas Tech are 2 of the top 8 teams in the country, coming in at number 7 and number 8. The Utes are on a bye this week, of course. Then they're going to be in Waco to take on Baylor before closing out the home slate against K-State. Final game of the season. It's hard to believe that it's almost here, just after Thanksgiving against Kansas. But last night was a big deal. It is a game changer. It does mean that plenty is still on the table for Utah, who has to win out and then get some help when it comes to Cincinnati losing one more game, Texas Tech losing another game, and somehow, some way, BYU losing 2. There are several scenarios on the table that give Utah football access to the CFP. Last night was a seismic shift in the narrative for this team during the final 3 games of the season. All right, wrapping it up, final segment of the program on this Wednesday afternoon, halfway through that work week, and you are one day closer to the weekend. No football tonight, but the NFL is back tomorrow. Busy NBA slate as pro basketball starts to kind of permeate throughout the consciousness of sports fans. We'll have the Spurs and the Lakers. Have you watched Victor Wembanyama play at all this year?
It's impossible to look away from.
It's horrifying.
But beautiful.
Yes. Horrifying from the standpoint if you're a team trying to build a team in the Western Conference with Oklahoma City and now San Antonio right there, not just now, but for the future.
Well, and there's always like, how do we defend this new prospect? Well, Dwight Howard, LeBron, Zion Williamson, right? Well, there's always like some sort of hope with Zion, like, sign some big-bodied guys that can be physical with him and force him to shoot outside. With Kevin Durant, you get some guys that can do the same thing, keep him out of the paint and, contest his shots on the perimeter. Although he's 7 foot tall, it's hard to defend him. That's why he's one of the greatest scorers ever. But with Victor Wembanyama, add another half foot onto Kevin Durant. Oh, and then give him probably a better handle than Kevin Durant. And maybe the best rim protector in the league. It's remarkable and awesome. And as you said, if you're any other team in the league, it's terrifying.
It sure is. So some NBA hoops tonight. The Jazz are in the Motor City to take on the Pistons, a team that was rebuilt in no small part by the assistance of one Dennis Lindsey. Is in a very good spot right now. That's a good young basketball team. College hoops, of course, has made its return, but football will continue to drive the portion of our coverage before we kind of inch into more coverage of basketball, both college and pro. All right, Porter, before we say goodnight, we get you halfway through that work week. Tomorrow is a Thursday. That's how it works when Wednesday is over, just so you know what comes our way on a Wednesday edition of the show.
On a Thursday edition of the show.
Did I say Wednesday after saying that tomorrow's Thursday?
That's
yeah.
okay.
What comes up on Thursday?
Kyle Bonagura stops by his weekly hit from ESPN. Probably a little soccer talk with the RSL offseason news, but mostly college football with him, a little NBA hoops as the daily assist, or like kind of daily assist until we get really into hoops with Dave McMiniman, also of ESPN. Matt Brown stops by the program for his weekly-ish hit, of course, talking some college football, as will Sam Bruckhouse, maybe some NFL with him ahead of Thursday Night Football on the station as well.
That's right. The Broncos and the Raiders, Thursday Night Football, will get things kicked off. It's hard to believe that it's Week 10 in the NFL, Week 12 in college football, and BYU, Texas Tech, the eyes of the country on that game, as game day will be in Lubbock, and it features 2 top 10 teams in the Big 12. Exciting time of year, so much left to do, and a lot of football left to be played. We'll say goodnight. Special thank you today to Lindsey Rhodes, Chris Camerani, and Tony Parks. If you missed any of the sound today, go to the website, ESPN700sports.com. Make sure to download our mobile app and take us on the go. That ESPN 700 app is available in the App Store and the Google Play Store. Then finally, for what we do in our space every afternoon for 4 full hours, live, Chris Camerani, JP, Falk, Jerks. Check out our podcast page. It's called The Drive with Spence Checketts. It's available wherever you get your shows. Subscribe, rate, review, say nice things in the comments. Give us all the stars. We all ask you to do that because if you do it, it does help us out. He's Porter. I'm Spence saying goodnight. Have a lovely Wednesday evening. We'll talk to you on a Thursday drive. As always, you can find that right here on ESPN 700.